Welcome in, Smite fans, to the EU SCC Finch and Aggro here. And boy, do we have some good games lined up for you here today. But Aggro, I think it's just worth mentioning that the EU SCC in general is incredibly competitive right now. You don't know which teams are going to be who. What I really mean to say is that it's all must-watch because you never know how a set's going to go.
Exactly. We thought that, the teams that have historically dominated the top end of the SCC, I'm talking, of course, of teams like Elysium with guys like Trixtank and Adaptang, we kind of thought that they were going to dominate EU. That hasn't been the case. We kind of thought the same for NA, that Baskin's team or Sino's team was going to dominate. Sino's team's been doing really, really well. They're undefeated, but Baskin's team winless at this point. So it's been a lot of fun to watch. You never know exactly what to expect during the SCC.
Yeah, it's all over the place in both of those regions. We'll have 2 EU games to start off and then 1 NA game at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and take a look then at the schedule here in Europe. Elysium up at the top, but can you call it up at the top? It's a 4-car pileup with that 2-1 up at the top of the standings. And even a team like Just F6, who've had a rough start, are really not that many games behind, which is, what a lot of teams use to really evaluate how far you are from getting that top spot. I think that what that really means is that any one of these teams at any given point could go on a tear, win a couple games in a row, and then they are the new team to look at. That is how close it is right now. And even with these first 2 teams, our very first game here, this is Pandemonium and Clay Soldiers that are about to play. These are 2 teams who have beaten other strong teams and lost to maybe a team they should have beaten. I mean, it's all over the place in terms of where the relative strength is of these 2 rosters.
Exactly, and for teams like these 2 that have a lot of talent but need to really work on their synergy to make sure they're going to be beating teams with talent like Adapting and Trixtank on them, winning these types of games is super important. Being able to separate yourself from the rest of the middle of the pack, I think it's pretty fair to call these 2 teams middle of the pack right now. But as you've said, it's impossible to say if they're going to be able to beat teams like Elysium on any given day because they've looked very capable of that. I just think that these games always end up being very important for these teams. It also helps us kind of understand the overall pecking order of the entire region after games like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, right, at a certain point. It does give us some glimpse. And this Pandemonium team is a team that has beaten Elysium at least in a 2-1 very, very close set. So that is what makes it, I think, so hard on any given day know exactly what version of this team that we are going to get. They've got Joshi in the middle lane for this team, Sharpay in the jungle, and those 2, I think, are a real key part of what this roster can do, how well they can compete with the other mid-jungles and supports in there of these other teams is going to be real critical to their success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this Pandemonium team, we've seen their glimpses of greatness, as you mentioned, beating Elysium. Then they had a tough matchup up against the Snake Hunters, where I believe that was another 2-1, but it didn't end up going their way.
Yep.
So we've seen this team kind of have their great moments and then have their moments where they struggle a little bit. For me, when Joshi is having really, really good games, that's when this team looks like they can beat anybody in the region, because I think Joshi's a really good player. It's just a matter of getting him on his comfort picks and letting him be that carry-style player, because I really think he can be for them. This backline between Joshi and StreakUp should be able to compete with the best of the best. If they get their space, I think they really can.
Yeah, and there should be an experienced backline for them as well. I think it's kind of alluding to your point there, right? You should be able to rely on them to be able to find those opportunities. Then you want that sort of front line with Preds there in that support role to kind of set up for them as well. You need that space created for them. So a lot to look forward to, I think, in that Pandemonium roster. But this Clay Soldiers roster on the other side is not one that you can overlook either. This has Sibi, Ferricrick, Spainify, guys that have been in the SCC for a long time now, vets of this level of competition, and they still have talent around them like an Agent and Sergazek, who we saw have a great week last week too. So, I mean, this is kind of a hard team to nail down as well, but what is your read or expectations for this Clay Soldiers team?
This team's really fun to watch for me, because so often we talked about this roster, but it was always Johnny. It was the Brady Bunch syndrome, basically, for this squad, where everyone just kind of talked about their jungler. And now it's really time for Ferricrick and Caspanify and Sibi in particular, that core 3, to, I think, make a name for themselves and show that it wasn't just the Johnny show whenever this team was playing. Obviously, this pick is the one that comes to everybody's mind. Ferricrick's Giannis, really, really strong. He is excellent on this pick. We saw last week in the SPL how good this Giannis can be in the right hands. Ferricrick is the best Giannis player at this level. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. We won't talk about this highlight, which is kind of doing him dirty. Oh, okay, the portal was good. Then we're okay. We thought he was using it to escape. I just think that if you can get Ferricrick on the Giannis and picks like it, that let him be the focal point. Again, it's kind of backline focused for me on this team. I mean, Zek, as you mentioned, has had some pretty good games. Agent has contributed, but I'm still looking at this core group that has been together for a long time, and with that, how much room can Sibby create for that backline and let them try and compete with the damage output of guys like Streak Up and Joshy on the other side.
Yeah, as we move into the picks and banter, Aggro, this is a critical game for this team because, as you said, they got to prove themselves here this year, and prove them is what this set is. This team, I believe, has beaten Accounting Department and Just F6, but remember the standings a moment ago. Those are the only two teams that are not at 2-1 right now as a part of those top four. So this is kind of their test now up against this Pandemonium roster, up against a team that's actually been stringing together some wins. When they do meet that middle of the pack, do they separate and create some space, or do they drop down with Accounting Department and Just F6?
Yeah, is it going to be a 3-3 situation or a 4-2 situation in terms of where the teams are grouped? And we've seen that in places like the SPL before, where there are teams that kind of ride that line really closely. We'll see if Clay Soldiers can show that they deserve solidly in that top end of the SPL, or if they are that separator, the gatekeeper for the bottom end.
Well, so far these bans, I think, fairly standard. It's Sunwoo, Kong, and Sobek removed for Pandemonium. Tsukiyomi still over there alongside Tiamat banned away. So far these are all really top of the meta bans. There's some ones I'm still a bit worried about. You'd expect Athena to show up in here at some point as well alongside the rest of these bans. But so far this is just kind of alongside the script. And there you go. You do get that Athena ban from Pandemonium. So nothing too crazy up here. But you kind of already highlighted how there are some specific player picks you want to get rid of, like perhaps that Giannis, and want to try and take that away from Ferrocrick in that middle lane. Aphrodite comes in. That's not one you ban every time, but against Pandemonium, they want to go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I think that the Giannis pick is what immediately stands out to me, but it is going to be a mid laner, just not the Giannis. It's Scylla here for Joshy, and I think this is one of the picks that he looked really good on last week up against the Snake Hunters. So shoring up that mid lane, shoring up that back line does make some sense to me, but now Clay Soldiers get extra flexibility in their draft. I'm definitely expecting them to take Giannis, but they don't have to take it right here. They can take it third right before the second ban phase, because you know a team's not going to take both Scylla and Giannis. So now you end up with Yamoja. You can go Apollo in this spot, Chernobog, Heim, any of those hunters that you've prioritized. It seems like those have been the three that have stood out to me the most in that hunter lane, but you can go with something in the soul lane as well. I think that if I'm Clay Soldiers, I would shore up at least one of those side lanes, and it looks like they're going to do that with the Chernobog pick, which has looked very, very good at basically every level we've seen it at. The global pressure stands to be pretty good on the bigger map.
Yeah, and then land down with all that damage on the root doesn't feel bad either. Guan Yu still out there if you're a Pandemonium and you want a little bit of sustain to match that Yamoja sustain on the other side. But they go with Kepri, and I don't think you're feeling too bad about that at all. That still does extend the fight out a bit in a way that sustain might as well with that res, and gives you a great sort of, maybe a bit more of a backliner than frontliner, but great Guardian presence, I would say, out of Pandemonium here to start off with, and decent setup for this Scylla. So not a bad way here. I mentioned the Guan Yu. Are there any other picks that you feel like really stand out for you here at this point as the Achilles comes in, maybe trying to make sure they keep that execute on their side?
Yeah, I think that's probably the thought process. Achilles is just in a pretty strong spot. He's not insane. He's not horrible. Just feels like a wait-and-see sort of pick. They probably want to see a little bit more from what the jungler is going to be. Set was what I was going to say. I mean, Set feels like the god that, alongside Guan Yu that you were mentioning, is really heavily prioritized that we aren't seeing picked quite yet. But this does mean that I'd assume Pandemonium's going to ban the Giannis. I would hope Pandemonium's going to ban the Giannis away from Ferrocrick, but maybe they won't. It would leave Clay Soldiers with a pretty CC-light 3v3. Yamoja has that crowd control in her kit, of course, but it's not as reliable as a lot of other Guardians. Set not bringing any sort of CC, whether he goes jungle or solo. And then if you go with something like the Giannis, you end up without true CC in your 3v3 a lot of the time. So that would be my only concern here for what I'm seeing out of the Clay Soldiers composition so far. But you got Yamoja, Chernobog, Set. I don't think you're feeling too bad about it either way.
No, I don't think you are. And take a look at what Clay Soldiers are valuing out of that ADC role. It's Apollo and Danzo bans, so the Heimdall still available. Maybe feeling like Set's got a decent enough matchup to stick with the Heimdall, so they're going to ban away the Apollo Danzo instead. And then we do eventually see that Giannis ban that we wanted there from Pandemonium. So Aggro, as our resident mid-expert here, if you're now Clay Soldiers, where do you want to go? There's not a lot of top-tier mages that are still left. Maybe Poseidon or something like that can come through, but they'll wait. They'll go ahead and go Kakulin in the meantime and grab that mid laner later.
So with the Cucullin pick, that kind of warps my answer a little bit. I think I'd be going Discordia here if I were in the mid lane for Clay Soldiers.
Give him some early pressure.
You just guarantee early pressure on one of the side lanes. You know you're going to be helpful with that passive one way or the other. It brings some crowd control to your mid 3v3, and it has a really, really strong late game that I still really like for Disco. So that'd be the direction that I would likely go. I do think they need some CC out of the mid lane. You could go something like Raijin, which has CC but only in the ultimate, and you're trading off a lot of your damage if you're going to use it. Poseidon I don't love into Khepri because Poseidon Kraken is often we're killing this dude, and Kepri's ult is I'm saving this dude, and Khepri ends up winning out on that the vast majority of the time.
Well, exactly as we expected, I think in the Hunter role with Danzo, Apollo, and Chernobog all taking Heimdall kind of the next one up, maybe even ahead of Danzo in a lot of people's calculations. So if I'm Clay Soldiers, I think that's a calculus you had to have made. You're okay with this Heimdall ending up in Pandemonium's hands, and then it's Nuwa on the other side. She does add a bit of that consistent CC you were asking for. Does she fit your bill?
Yeah, I think it works. I think that Clay Soldiers are assuming they're going to have pressure with the draft, and I would generally agree with that assessment. It's not guaranteed, though. I mean, one failed invade or one botched fight means that Pandemonium can get a lead in some of these side lanes, and when side lanes start to collapse on Nuwa, she starts to get a lot worse. But when Nuwa is able to just chill out, sit underneath her tower, farm out in mid, and then help out a gank in one of the side lanes with an ultimate and scale to that late game, she can feel very, very strong. Khepri can have some trouble dealing with her because if she gets enough people low, then he's got too many targets for Scarab's Blessing to go on to. I think Nuwa is fine. I just prefer her with hard CC in the mid lane because her damage is pretty binary. Did I get a Clay Soldier explosion or not? But, I mean, maybe they just get a buff because their team name is the Clay Soldiers, so hopefully the Nuwa ends up doing better for them.
That's right. They have the titular name selected here. Pandemonium and Clay Soldiers. Let's go down for game number 1.
Thank you, Finch. Thank you, Aggro, Dolson, Gormizer, and Doug, bringing you game number 1 between Pandemonium and the Clay Soldiers. Gore, the mid lane Scylla has been run through and through and through early on here in Season 8, but we're going to get an early look at what we might expect from the Nuwa here. It's been a popular kind of flex pick, never been super in the meta, never wildly out of the meta over the last year, but we've always seen the potential for this pick to do well.
She's just big chillin', right? Like, she will come in, and like you said, she is going to be played, and sometimes you're going to see her be the reason your team wins. It's easy to meme her. You press 4, you're guaranteed to hit your ult. It's nice and easy, guaranteed damage for your team. Pretty helpful at that. But the thing is like, she does a lot of, I would even argue maybe sleeper damage in there. Like the Clay Minion burst damage is way higher than you think it's going to be. That Shining Metal, her 3, is really big. But these Clay Soldiers as well are just incredible at being able to get in there. Not always using them for their personal attack, but if you read that second paragraph, they do apply a protection debuff that is crucial in the middle of some of these late-game fights. That's the thing that I think really is helpful for her. You're looking at Nemesis on the other side doing something very similar. Some of the items that like tanks or frontliners pick up have that kind of on there to get rid of those prots. But having that on your mid lane mage is always a nice little hit for you, because it not only means Nuwa is then going to hit harder. If Nuwa hits someone and gets the stun after the Clay Soldiers collapse, Set all of a sudden is going to be able to jump in there and shred them.
Such a fun god to play. It's self-disengage with the ultimate. Keeps you alive in fights a little bit longer, and you get the chunk damage. You rarely end up anywhere else but top of the damage charts with Nuwa. So if you're playing her in ranked, you never get blamed. It's great. It's all one big happy situation whenever you're playing the Nuwa there in the mid lane. Pred's not happy though. A little stun onto the Khepri, but he'll be able to walk away. I was surprised, Gore, admittedly, that Agent and Caspanify were getting out-pressured this early on. You normally assume that the Emoja lane is going to be the one exerting a lot of pressure, but we've seen this rise in Heimdall as well, and maybe that's keeping things a little bit more even.
Yeah, Heimdall, I mean, he's just got decent clear. He's very safe, and with Khepri beside him, all right, it's going to be enough to keep up. Chernobog, early on, again, both of these hunters don't necessarily have the best early clear compared to some of the others, but it feels like the support pressure that's going to come out depends on how heavily Agent wants to keep again, hold on to that Moonstrike, get that stun available for yourself, make sure your Omi is there. You don't have a lot at the beginning as Yamoja. I think it's a minimum of 10. And 10 disappears really quickly when your heal is worth 3, everything else is worth 2. It's very difficult to throw it all out.
Oh, no, big stun from Agent and big dash from Kispanify. First blood over to the Clay Soldiers. Streak Up will use the Bifrost to survive. That's what I meant when I said I was surprised that Agent and Kispanify were pushed underneath their Tier 1 tower, but they just wait, take over to level 3. They get that full rotation outside of the ultimate ready to go. And they find first blood on Gore. What we have seen as a somewhat susceptible pick here in this Khepri. It's a great start for the Clay Soldiers duo lane.
Yeah, try to force Khepri to fall back. They get an invade off the back of it as well, so that they get even more experience stripping that away from Preds. He's going to take a little while to catch up. Yamoja with a lead is not something you want to deal with. Although, Dave, I'll admit, I'm a little, I'm like torn because I like watching Khepri. I love Khepri. I love Yamoja. Like, they are two of my favorite supports to play. But that's not a Crabbrave skin. We don't have that yet, but you know, I'm actually genuinely upset. I'm so excited for that, and I can't wait to see whether or not the pros start picking that one up. Preds here looks pretty, but not as pretty as he could be with that Monster Cat Battle Pass coming out in the next one. Either way, I'm excited to see the supports both on both sides here. It looks like a Thebes rush here for Preds, skipping boots entirely early on. Khepri's not really fast, so I don't know if I like the idea of jumping to a stacking item first, but at the end of the day, if he's going to be able to get those stacks online, depending on how Agent goes with his build, it could really help the fact that he might, well, otherwise, like, he's already behind, right? If you're going to fall behind, get your stacks online as soon as you can. If Agent jumps immediately into something like a Sovereignty, you're going to fall even further behind in terms of where your fight potential is going to be. So it'll take a little while to get online, but once he's there, Preds is going to be able to, again, apply that ultimate. That's a free get out of jail free card. You're going to have the same tanky presence from a Khepri. Abduct is still going to be good. His root's still going to be good. It's just going to be a little while before we get to see that, and hopefully they don't fall too far behind in the process.
Well, it's speed boots for Agent, so now that the Yamoja is going to get to rotate around the map and leave an impact wherever she ends up rotating. It's Benevolence is the start item start for both of these supports here. We've seen that certainly debated recently. Sibby, beautiful knock up there. You're under a little bit of pressure. Kana has the ultimate ready to go. If Sibby doesn't get that knock up, looking like he might be an execute threshold on the other end. We'll see what the supports can do here. Purple buff invade, and Streak Up and Preds, I think, smartly want nothing to do with it. That's a great call, Gore. Clay Soldiers see that Sarpei is on the right-hand side of the map. They safely invade in onto that purple buff, and Joshy's going to get forced out a little bit.
And this is, like you said, not only good pressure, but they're really utilizing where their gods' peaks are. Like, level 6 is the best time for set, and you make a rotation over there, Nemesis isn't going to be able to fight you. She can't really do much right now. She can slow you. You can get ulted. Like, she can be a really good setup god. But I'm not looking at Nemesis pre-level, I would even say 12, as like a hyper carry where she's going to come through and change everything. Realistically, you have to have that combo. If Joshy's not around or maybe not available for you, Sarpei has to be in the right area, right time to make all the stars line. Otherwise, it feels like a good late-game draft for Pandemonium, right? The Heimdall with the Khepri, with the Nemesis, all of those really exceeding well in those late-game fights and being able to help prioritize targets. If Pandemonium can make it there, kind of hovering around this same deficit, right? Anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 gold, they're not going to have too much to worry about as time goes forward. But if they start to fall behind, let's say 2,000 to 3,000 gold, then you start questioning your decisions.
Wow, look at what Sibby's able to do here, Gore. This Kulkullen, even in levels with the Achilles, and Kana, with help from Sarpei, has to ult away to survive. Now there's a bit of a collapse happening on the right-hand side of the map. Ultimate from Sarpei connects onto Sibby. There's a crush from Joshy. I'm a monster, no good. Sarpei underneath the tier 1 tower. Sibby wants more, but Sibby gets stunned by Kana in the tower shots. Get the rest done. Maybe feeling like he could play right on the edge there was Sibby, and it kind of feels unfortunate because this Kulkullen has been dominating the right-hand side. Yeah. Unfortunately, leaves empty-handed.
That was good control from the rest of Pandemonium, right? It wasn't much that Sarpei did outside of get out of the ability's range to make sure you don't get hit, and everybody else was like, oh, he stood in the tower. We can guarantee lock him down, whether it's just a slight body block, if we can find any sort of lockdown here. it's going to be enough. And they're able to do it, right? And that turns so much of that fight into something just a little bit better with Joshy's rotation. Like, that Sarpei-Joshi combination, in my mind, is going to be one of the deadliest things you have to deal with. Anyone that can strip away protections and allow Scylla to hit you harder is scary to me in the late game. And Scylla, even at level 9 just now, depending on whether or not Joshy decided to put a second point in his ult or max out that crush to make sure it's going to get the passive damage right now at level 9, or you can just wait until level 10. Yeah, you can see that. Skip the point in his ult to level up his 2. So he's a little more powerful right now than what you'd really like. And that's like the first maybe jump for Scylla. The next jump is going to be when he finishes what I'm going to assume is either going to be, or at this point should just be, Rod of Tahuti. And that's going to be a very big power spike. Then at that point, it's starting to become a deadly pick. Maybe not as deadly, but something dangerous.
Well, there's a decent combo from Preds and Joshy. I'm a monster. I was going to raise some concerns because we saw Joshy hit the crush. Then the I'm a monster that would have found the immediate execute. Pandemonium did get the kill regardless. Would have been a little quicker had Joshy been able to hit the I'm a monster on the right-hand side of the map. And so then you start to wonder, outside of the Sikkim, where does that setup start to come for you if you're Joshy in these late-game fights? You got a nice stun from the Achilles. You know, Sarpei can slow down some targets. Maybe Preds then, Gore, has to be driving a lot of the hard CC for this Scylla out of the mid lane. We know how important that is, the root and the abduct. Ever so important. Caspanify one level ahead of Streak up here. Find some bullying. But Pandemonium, they've got to kind of play around this burst damage from the Scylla in the late game. You got to set up for her, and you got to hope that Preds is able to do it.
And if Preds is able to find themselves alive in scenarios like that, I mean, River's Rebuke thrown up and he just kind of walks away. Didn't seem to worry too much about it.
No.
Not a very heavy investment from Clay Soldiers, but I think it goes to showcase, like, Preds, as you had highlighted, crucial to these fights. If Preds goes down there, yeah, you're bullying the support, haha, but also it opens up the opportunity not only for this Greater Scorpion, but it peels away a majority of the hard CC, right? There's still the slow from Sarpei. There's some things that Streak Up can do with an ult to make sure that it's guaranteed, but those are more far and few in between until Kana gets here. Then you start to have, with this Achilles, maybe a little more consistent team fight potential coming through. Right now, like you had highlighted, it's all Preds all the time. It feels like Clay Soldiers recognize that. If Preds goes down, the fight potential for Pandemonium disappears pretty shortly after.
Right. I think it was good patience there from Pandemonium. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen Streak Up with a purple buff. It's been invaded every single time by Sorega and the rest of the Clay Soldiers' left-hand side pressure. But Pandemonium, I think, smartly lets them walk in, get the purple buff, and then it's the Greater Scorpion confirmed for Pandemonium on the back end. So feeling like they can still keep up in some of this micro game. It's ever so important for Pandemonium to stay in this game. Just about 800 or so is the gold differential as we stand, so nothing too huge for either side. 1 kill apiece here. Neither jungler, Gore outside of Sarpei, has really shown their face all that much. Seems like Sorega on this set is in farm now mode. Let's invade, let's farm little by little. Let's build up to a point where I'm going to start to be able to team fight more effectively.
Has that stone-cutting sword online. Both have finished their boots. I mean, at this point, it's the same build for both junglers, save for the blink there on Sarpei versus the beads over there for Sorega. And so, like you had highlighted, it's kind of slow. Like I thought I was going to see more out of this set after earlier. Like level 6 had a big rotation over here to steal away the purple buff, get some of the back camps. Big rotation in to help fight Joshy alongside Sibby over there on right lane when Sibby unfortunately fell. But it's been slow otherwise. There hasn't been a lot of setup from Agent or Farrakrick to really get the jungler going. Sorega hadn't looked for any 1v1s onto anybody or any solid ganks.
There you go. There's an ult down from Sarpei, Sikkim, Crush. Everything but the I'm a Monster connects onto Agent, but look at this. Now Sarpei, a bit overextended. Scarab's Blessing and then a blink from Preds to further disengage out from this fight. Nuwa does not have the damage, but Farrakrick keeps himself out of the fight, but look at that, you gotta drop right back down on the other end. Joshy, double execute with the I'm a Monster, all 3 connect. You don't need CC if your aim is good, and Joshy proving that to be the case. Triple kill for the Scylla out of the mid lane.
I mean, just kind of out of nowhere, right? Like, it looked like, okay, you could turn one of these around. Streak Up kind of sacrifices himself for the hero play there from Joshy. I mean, that's good, and look, when it happens, right after that Rod of Tahuti, right? A huge burst of power for the Scylla to come in. And an unfortunate timing, I want to say, from not even everything. Like, Clay Soldiers just didn't seem to know what they wanted to do in that fight. Serga at one point, you know, they hit Sarpei, proc the Kepri res, and it seems like that was the go button. You know what? The best way to kill you is to kill you twice. If you're going to respawn, we'll just dash into the tower. But then they didn't dash under the tower. It seemed a little timid.
Yep.
And that trepidation, that 1 minute of hesitation there, opened up the opportunity for Pandemonium to turn that around. I'm kind of surprised Pandemonium weren't able to run too much with it. Preds was too low. They didn't really have someone to tank. If Sarpei, or not Sarpei, Kana rotates over to that fight, that's a Gold Fury. I mean, they're able to pick up a little bit more. Now they're still in that presence where do we go? It looks like they're starting up a Pyromancer on the side of Clay Soldiers, so even though they lose a huge fight and the massive lead they had managed to cultivate, they're still looking to be proactive on the map.
Right, the gold is at least dead even. So you lose 3 kills, you get 1, but really then the threat is the snowball potential that this mid lane now has. 1, maybe 1.5 levels. Ferricrick just ticked over to level 13. Top XP per minute is Joshi, no surprise there after the triple kill in mid. So Rod of Tahuti into what we're assuming is a Deso, that's what we've seen a good bit. You get the cooldown kind of reset if you're able to also get the reset on your ultimate, so some good synergy there with Joshi's kit. And I think, maybe, Gore, that alleviates some fear, right? If you're worried about this Scylla and her ability to hit those I'm a monsters and the crushes and the sickums without all this hard CC. Well, you're going to do it again. It's a River's Rebuke that locks Clay Soldiers into their own death. And Preds is the one who grabs the kill. Joshi from the backline, free casting still. There you go. Now you get onto the Scylla. I'm not sure why you step that far forward. Instead, Clay Soldiers lose 1, walk forward, and turn around 2.
And that should be a start, in my mind, to a Gold Fury rotate over. You can clear those up. But again, they're playing it patient. I at least want to see them try for the start. Streak Up even made the rotation over. Like, Streak Up's checking in the event someone was going to start it. I mean, a 2-for-1. I guess you lose your mid laner, but with a carry still alive, your assassin's still alive. The burn should have still been there. I guess admirable from Clay Soldiers at this point. Again, playing it safe, making sure things don't get too out of hand. Joshi and Preds just take too many steps forward there. And now we're starting to see the collapse towards the Fury Pit. It looks like Clay Soldiers, no, not even going for it now. They're just looking for a gank and anything passive at this point. It's kind of surprising to see as many fights cropping up and going the way they are, and yet so far none of the major objectives, Pyromancer maybe the exception here, have really swung towards either side. I'm surprised to see it because Clay Soldiers seem to want to play the map a little bit stronger. They're still getting a lot of these objectives, stripping away pretty much any jungle camp they can in terms of the mid-harpies, as well as if they can risk it, the invades. It seems like they're looking for kills.
Srega looking for a kill on the Shriek Up, 1 level difference. Shriek Up's winning this engagement. You can see Heimdall's reached the point where those auto attacks are starting to chunk. Kana may be the same, looking for the stun that might have gotten Civi just shy of execute range. If nothing else, the Kilcullen has to go back to base. So the tides have started to change in the solo lane as well. Civi dominating that early game, but Kana stays alive, rotates to mid, grabs a fight, or a kill and an assist rather. And now that lane feeling a little bit more comfortable for the Achilles. Interesting, Gore, in this conversation about scaling, as the Greater Scorpion drops down, and there's an ultimate as well. Sarpei, 3 versus 1. Is he going to get out of this one? There's a Scarab's Blessing from Preds if need be, but Sarpei just walks right on out. Now Preds having to sidestep some damage, and he's going to be able to do so as well. The rest of the Clay Soldiers are here. Pandemonium is in. Gore, 4 ultimates get used there. Not a single kill.
Yeah, 3 of them were used to try and get Sarpei. I don't know why. Like, look, Sarpei is, kill the jungler, but maybe have a little more lockdown. Now they're going for the Gold Fury. This could be up in the air.
Oh, Civi with the big knockup. It's Pandemonium on the Gold Fury, but the fight might be leaning red on the backside. Kana runs down Srega, and Caspanify has been able to free cast for the last couple of seconds. Kana has to dash away. Ferricrick, no ultimate to try to execute down on the Shriek Up. That would be a chunky ultimate if that would have gotten the kill onto Heimdall. So, kind of 1-for-1 trade there, Gore, on the back end, but the big confirm from what I believe was Joshi on that Gold Fury gives Pandemonium the fight win.
Support for jungle, always going to feel worthwhile for Pandemonium as well. So they lose a tier 1. Still coming out ahead for Pandemonium, but you can definitely tell that they are well, I was going to say struggling. Kana might turn that around.
Oh my, there's some lockdown for Joshi. Kana on a killing spree, a massive swing in this game now from the Achilles, who started to take the front line and the back line over. In that previous fight, Kana just kind of walked at Sorega, and this set did not have the room to operate in the previous fight. And you can say the exact opposite for Joshi, where outside of a bit of face tanking that happened for his one and only death, this Scylla has not really been under all that much pressure from the Clay Soldiers either. So it's great team fight play from this Pandemonium squad. Gore, I'm interested. It's a bit of a micro kind of notice, a bit of a micro question here. Ferrikrik, interesting on his build path, Spear of Desolation after the boots. Maybe opting for a little bit of scaling, a little bit of late game with that Book of Thoth first overall.
Yeah, that's the one that is definitely something to catch you off guard. Book of Thoth has just not been... there are certain moments where it is solid. I'm trying to remember if this was the patch where it had gotten a little bit of a buff here, because that was where I think a lot of the conversation could come from. Like, it synergizes incredibly well with Kukul Khan as it comes through. And admittedly, late game, you're gonna hit really hard as Nuwa with this, but it is that sacrifice, as you had highlighted. You're not necessarily doing as much. That Rod of Tahuti, as expensive as it is kind of instant gratification. You buy it, you get the power immediately off the bat, and it has been the kind of route to go. More or less, depends on what you're up against, but you have that Ratatouille, you get the boots of your choice, then you get a Spear of Desolation. That, at that point, is, what, 250 power that you're stacking onto it? You're going to hit like a truck.
Pandemonium secures the Pyromancer here, Gore. Let's see what Ferrikrik can do. Maybe building into Tahuti later on. Pred's evaporating, and the Scarab's Blessing used on himself. Oh, massive stun! Massive! I'm a monster! Are you kidding me? And the resets on the back end of it. A beautiful team fight from Pandemonium. That is disgusting. Pandemonium delete Clay Soldiers.
I mean, just clean. Streak Up has had better rotations over.
That
like,
was
Hispanify
gross.
is 5-2-1, but Streak Up is the carry right now that has been making the difference. And we highlighted it earlier. I mean, they were in 1v1s and 2v1s even, where Streak Up was just hitting harder, doing better. And it's this divergence in the path build. Hispanify, at this point, going to be great at killing towers, really good at killing tanks. Not so much maybe at some of these squishies, where Streak Up's gone straight into that Wind Demon, something we saw a lot in the SBL last week. And so unsurprisingly, when he rotates over, the first two dead, and admittedly the three they're still trying to count their way back into the map, are the ones where he's just able to have a huge rotation. Joshi does a ton of damage. It's just difficult to deal with this late game comp I think Pandemonium have, and I think Clay Soldiers, again, back to that Book of Thoth, maybe tried to play into that and build a little more late game, but because Agent specifically is a little behind, went for the Lotus Crown before the Gauntlet of Thebes, so he's fallen pretty drastically behind in terms of health and protections compared to what Preds has. It just feels like their builds aren't going to be as strong standing throughout the game as what Pandemonium have here.
Feels like it's Hispanify against the world, doesn't it? 5-2-1 on the Chernobog. But Streak Up opting into the popular crit build that we've seen on the rise, especially with Heimdall. That's going to synergize very well. So the lead that we saw in the duo lane starting to mean less and less. As a Heimdall gets the items, gets the gold online, both level 19, so they will be able to upgrade those starter items here soon enough. Tier 2 tower in the mid lane looked at by Pandemonium. Tier 2 tower in the mid lane taken by Pandemonium. Still, both towers in the duo lane, so that's something Pandemonium can work towards here as well. Gore, it's one of those early enough fire giants here in this game where there's enough on the map. You're going to have some time potentially for a Phoenix Siege towards the end, but this is one of those where this gold lead really just balloons, doesn't it? Where there's so many towers still left, there's so many of the non-respawning objectives on the Clay Soldier side of the map that you can look towards. This is kind of easy for Pandemonium. You just work through, get all the towers that you can, get up that gold lead, maybe look towards a Phoenix later on, or maybe look towards it right now.
Yeah, this is actually, like, it's one of those things you had to get rid of some of the towers in mid and definitely over here on left, right? If two are still standing in any lane at 20 minutes, like, you've been slowing down, you can see two tier 1s still standing for Pandemonium, which is going to cause trouble for Clay Soldiers in the event they start to pull things back in their favor. It's mainly a gold play. It's going to bring a lot in your favor. I'm surprised to see them back off of the Phoenix as easily as they did, in fact, just because of the fact that that's the standard play. You had 2 minutes left on your Fire Giant at the time. You could have just run it down, tried to win the fight. Maybe you lose it, but even if you lose that fight, you're not going to lose the game at the end of the day. As long as at least one of you makes it out alive, you maybe lose a tier 2 tower. I don't think there's a lot Clay Soldiers that are able to retaliate from there. So it feels like they're playing it safe, but maybe too safe. They have a little bit of wiggle room with the timer, but not anywhere near as much as I personally would like. I feel like they could have definitely won it there. But with all that fresh gold in their pocket, they do get to go back and finish off some of those items, like the Spirit Desolation just picked up there for the Scylla, as well as a little more crit there for Streak Up. So they get to come back and feel stronger, just in general.
Right.
But now you have to decide which Phoenix you want to do it to assault, and which one is going to be worthwhile. And you have less than a minute to do it.
Yeah, this Pandemonium team has just skyrocketed in this game. I was concerned about hard CC and where the Scylla setup would come from, and Joshy's been able to get it done on his own, whether it's a 4-man stun from Kana, which I can't believe I'm saying, but massive team fight that's set up for Joshy and Kana himself. This Pandemonium team, I mean, they've played the small odds, and they've come up in their favor pretty consistently here this game. That translates to an 8,000 gold lead, level 20, for 4 out of 5 members of this team. So those starter items now getting upgraded, a massive swing in that department as well. Pred's close to being able to upgrade his starter item on the other end. You're going to rotate to the right-hand side here, Gore, take down this tier 2 tower. The ultimate question is, this Fire Giant's going to come back in exactly 1 minute. Is it worth a defense or a contest if this Clay Soldiers team? I'm not sure they have the legs to win a fight.
It's so weird because it seems like they don't have anything to fall back on, and admittedly the last few fights have been going nowhere near their way, so why bother? But something about Pandemonium, the way they looked at the left Phoenix and the mid Phoenix there, they're too timid to just fight Clay Soldiers, at least with that 6-man advantage, right? They need it to be over in the Fire Giant pit. And so maybe you can, again, dodge the Fire Giant fight, keep all 5 alive, and just stay under Phoenix, force Pandemonium to be the ones to engage on you. But I also think they could risk it because there's no real reason in my mind with the way the fights have been going to be scared of Clay Soldiers too drastically. Like, you will end up losing a couple people if you dive the Phoenix. That's definitely, that's an outcome that's almost guaranteed. It just depends on who and how drastic that's going to be. Maybe it was the right call just a couple minutes ago because why not? There's still tier 2s on the map. Get some of the gold. Like, no need to risk it entirely right here. But for this Fire Giant, I think Clay Soldiers put up a fight. If it doesn't seem to be going your way, back out and try to keep everyone as alive as possible. But don't just let this one go by the wayside. You're still very much in this, even though you're 9,000 gold down.
Well, Joshy is the target, right, for Clay Soldiers, but then that poses an issue because Streak Up has completed his build here. Wind Demon into Deathbringer on Heimdall, 25 minutes in, absolutely chunks. So there is a lot of backline that needs diving now if you're the Clay Soldiers, and they have not been able to do that very consistently at all. Sorega has been deleted every single time he shows his face. It seems like only 2 deaths, but 2 in pivotal team fights, and this Fire Giant being crit for 500 and 600 or so, confirmed by Pandemonium. Hard to out-confirm the Scylla. The fight afterwards goes underway. Sorega, though, he has found the backline this time. Preds, maybe a misclick on his ultimate there. Scarab's blessing onto himself. Clay Soldiers find an opening. Oh, the Riptide's beautiful. And now the lockdown's there as well. Clay Soldiers do have the legs for a fight, and they'll do you one better. They'll win it as well.
I mean, Fire Giant's still ticking here for Sarpe and Kana. Should be enough to keep them alive, but I don't know if I can say anywhere near as much for this right-hand Phoenix. This should be a pretty easy siege. With 30 seconds left, they might even be able to win off this. 2 towers standing. It's going to take them a little bit of time without Fire Giant. That's going to be the risky part.
They do have the Clay Soldiers, some respawnable minions to tank up the Phoenix. And look at this, Clay Soldiers, what a turnaround. This is a game Pandemonium has been in control of from the onset, and Clay Soldiers on the verge of closing it down. Big stun from Ferrocryk in and out of the wall will go Caspanify. You need that damage to end the game. Sarpe has found the first. Big stun on the back end as well. Double kill for Sarpe the Titan. Down to 10% HP. Sibi wants no more. Joshy is respawned. Double kill for Kana. Deicide. Pandemonium can now turn it around.
Look, I'm going to go ahead and say it. That is one of those calls that you have to assume is going to work out in your favor. It's a 2v5 under the Titan, and that is the difference
Kana
of those tier 2 towers as well, right? If Fire Giant is on the side of Clay Soldiers, no problem for them. It's a dead Titan. If those 2 tier 2s are already missing, no problem for them. That Titan's dead. It is strictly the state of the game, and Kana at 7-0-6 being an absolute behemoth on this Achilles that saves that game. Otherwise, I was about to give Clay Soldiers props, picking the new Wa and playing exactly what you'd expect and what they need with their namesake. But that is just unfortunate for them. Joshi as well respawns at the perfect time. Dave, look, that one was like, if you had told me that was scripted, I would believe you, because it just seemed too picturesque for them to be able to get a defense like that.
Wow, what a way for that game to end. 7-0-6 score by the end of it. That's a fantastic way to start off this week in competitive Smite. Kana, Gore, that's always been my talking point when we're on the desk and we're talking about this Pandemonium team. Kana, solo lane, always comes to mind. Joshi, fantastic game. Really, everyone from Pandemonium, I think, had a pretty good game here.
Yeah.
But Kana in that solo lane, out of that solo lane with the Achilles, 7-0-6, absolutely took things over. Big mantle stun there under the Titan as well to buy just a little bit of extra time. This is a game of small odds, small percentages that all went Pandemonium's way. Game number 1, over to Pandemonium. Quick break. Be back for game 2.
Wow, what a way for that last game there to end. Aggro, I spent the first 26 minutes of that game, and it was only 27 minutes, talking about how Joshi and Kana were the two-man duo. They won that game all on their own. That's who we're talking about. But then, on the Fire Giant, they end up losing the fight. It's Clay Soldiers in a should-win scenario in a 5v2, and they couldn't get it done. Then the counter in comes out, and that ends up being the story of the game. Not what a great game Joshi and Kana had. Aggro, we talked about it as it happened. Was that an end that should have worked for them, or was that just a good defense?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think that there were certainly some execution errors on the side of Clay Soldiers. I think they should have been able to end the game in that spot, but a great play from Kana and Sarpei keeps them from doing so. But you're right to talk about the Kana-Joshi game. In my mind, it still was the Kana-Joshi game. It was just that Sarpei at the end goes, hey, me too. And they go, all right, yeah, fine. You can come in and help us out a lot. Really, really impressive stuff from this team. And look, it's exactly what we were talking about during the death segment. Which backline is going to get more help? A four-man stun counts as a lot of help, for the record. You're going to get some really good opportunities when Kana's making plays like that. I think that overall, I'm looking at this Scylla pick as maybe irrelevant to just how well the rest of the team played around it.
Yeah, they really set him up. See all that damage Kana did to Hispanify? That was really the beginning of the end when he took all that damage. And it was you and Miff saying when we were kind of in our virtual green room, why are the tanks DPSing the Titan when they should be peeling and keeping the damage alive? And instead, a miscommunication there. Clay Soldier's backline gets deleted by the Kana Sarpe saw blades that chew right through him. And then it's Pandemonium on for their counter end. And really, it's kind of hard to feel bad for Clay Soldiers because you think the game ends up eventually how it probably should have from where the numbers were at that point. But they had a chance. Clay Soldiers did an amazing Fire Giant defense. I can't take that away from them. And they couldn't completely execute all the way.
Look, I mean, it was close, but you just can't hope to win the one fight and then be able to end off of it. You got to be able to win some more skirmishes before that. And really, no skirmish had gone their way. Even after that triple kill for Joshi, the game stayed super even through the first like 17 or 18 minutes. But every time they started to group it up, it just felt like it was consistently Pandemonium's squad pulling a little bit ahead. And I think that that's just because that the difference in terms of effective damage in the course of a team fight, Ferrocryk did nearly the same amount of damage as Joshi, but so much of that is Nuwa damage on characters that aren't in the fight, that don't need to be DPS at that time. The effective damage was all on the side of Pandemonium. So I'm looking for something a little bit more team fight oriented. If they can keep the game even through the first 18 minutes or so, you can go with a more team fight focused god. Nuwa can do it, but I just didn't like it in conjunction with the rest of the composition. I think I'd like to see them change up that mid lane pick if they're going to keep that same style of comp going forward.
But the picks and bans made a ton of sense in that one, didn't they? They prioritized very early on the Achilles when I was thinking, don't you guys want to go on you in this spot or something like that? But they knew, apparently, that Kana was going to play lights out just like that. So if that's how well my man's going to play on it, then I withdraw my picks and bans critiques. Feel free to go ahead and prioritize that pick for him because he had an excellent performance. Wouldn't be surprised, though, Aggro, I want your read on this. If the ban parts look the same, a lot of it was just meta stuff. You're probably going to have to ban no matter what. You expect that to largely stay the same?
Yes, I do. I look, I mean, maybe you ban the Scylla here if you're Clay Soldiers.
Sure.
I don't think you're banning Achilles, and that was the real problem for you. Maybe they could talk themselves into something like a Khepri ban, thinking that that was really impactful in that game, and Pred certainly was impactful in that game, but I don't think I'd change anything save for maybe banning Scylla and keeping that out of Joshy's hands.
I think Clay Soldiers' third ban was Aphrodite. I don't think you have to do so much mental gymnastics to say maybe just go ahead and ban Scylla in that same spot, but maybe then it's Aphrodite and then this long, prolonged sustain ward. You don't love that either, so maybe that could be the debate for the Clay Soldiers guys. It was Athena here for Pandemonium in this ban slot last time, and it'll be Tyr instead. Now, as the first pick, that puts pressure on Clay Soldiers, who then must ban Athena. So now Scylla and Aphrodite are both open, and where will Pandemonium go with that sort of opportunity? It is back to the Scylla, but Clay Soldiers have a great chance to respond with their top two picks.
Exactly. I think that now you've got a lot of options here if you're on the Clay Soldier side. I mean, you can try and keep that Yemoja. I thought that Yemoja was still very, very impactful, but you've got plenty more options overall. Feels like it's the Achilles that just the threat of what Kana did in that last game, and certainly that makes some sense, right? I mean, the man hit a 4-man Achilles stud and also went undying and also felt unkillable and also did a billion damage. And for all those reasons, I think the Achilles does make a lot of sense, but now you're in a spot where you're giving up another one of those priority picks, and they go with the Achilles Chernabog, which the Chern was certainly okay in that last match, but still came away with the loss, and for that reason I might have wanted to change it up.
Yeah, they go ahead and take the Chernabog here, and we already saw how the math worked out. Essentially, when there's 4 really good ADCs out there, you pick one, ban the other 2, Pandemonium will happily take in that 4th one then. So we'll see if that's where Clay Soldiers elect to spend all their bans. Again, Pandemonium pass on the Yemoja, though. It is Ymir picked up for them. And after what happened last picks and bans phase, I'm like, well, come on, guys, explain to me the thought process. And then they did when they put those pieces to action. I'm going to find myself agreeing with them on paper. They go back to this Nemesis for Sarpe, but now they have a much more aggressive pick for Preds in that support role. Khepri and Ymir are pretty different.
Yes, they are, and you have a lot more options to be aggressive, and that's why I like this Giannis pick a lot, actually, in response, because something like the Nuwa would have been really, really scary to go up against that Ymir. But Giannis doesn't really care about your walls or walls on the map at all. He can portal out through at least one of the map walls. Can't go through the player-made walls, of course. But we talked so much about this pick for Ferricrick coming into this set. There's a reason. This guy is really, really strong on this pick. And Nemesis is a tough matchup for it because you can't really strip that Retribution Shield away from her. Ends up being very difficult to deal your damage to her, but I think that we could see Ferricrick succeed.
So again, for Play Soldiers, it's the two ADC bands, Danzo and Apollo. So if you're Pandemonium, you can very happily take a Heimdall just like in Game 1 picks and bans. The Pandemonium making some adjustments. These are jungle bands, and the set that slipped through last time will not get to again. It's the Ratatosker and the set band. Feels like maybe a bit of a hard commit to this Achilles being solo, but those are both picks that can kind of flex. So maybe not, right? Maybe they're still kind of relying on Clay Soldiers being able to flex that Achilles around, and they're going towards two more that could fit in either jungle or solo.
Yeah, I think it's pretty smart. Like you said, you can split the difference there. I do think this Achilles is going to go solo, but on the off chance that he doesn't, you have some assassin bands that can flex as well. Xingqian pickup is an interesting one. I think it's pretty strong right now. I actually like it a lot against Nemesis. I think this is one of her harder matchups in the Guardian role because he has multiple ways to pull that shield. She doesn't have CC immunity. A lot of her damage comes through auto attacks, and Furious Roar takes care of that. I love the Xingqian pick against the Nem and up against that Ymir because he actually has a leap that can get over that Ymir wall. So I think this is a very, very smart pick here for Clay Soldiers.
Could have a good matchup into Pandemonium. I'm agreeing with you. You might think the normal, traditional setup for Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, not quite there, but you throw them into Portal and Unstable Vortex, you're not really complaining on the back of that, so I think they can make it work. Pandemonium rounded off with draft out with no surprise in the Heimdall, but it's King Arthur to give them yet another brawler over there in the solo lane. So you take away Achilles, yes, but now he's got for Camelot, for Avalon on his side. I don't know how much better you're feeling about that.
No, I mean, you're still dealing with a frontliner that does a lot of damage and can set people up and be super strong and hard to kill at the exact same time. I like the Hun Bats. It brings a little bit more CC. There's actual pressure on Purification Beads now with this composition setup. I'm a little bit worried about Clay Soldier's consistent damage. Hun Bats dumps the ultimate and then kind of has to wait around for his buttons to come back up. He's not exactly an assassin that can deal prolonged damage over the course of a team fight. Giannis, a little bit more single target, a little bit more lower damage than a lot of other mages. Achilles has pretty long cooldowns. I'm really looking at Caspanify to shoulder a heavier load in this game. I think he's going to have to deal a lot of the damage.
They're going to need Caspanify to step up here in game number 2. Pandemonium and Clay Soldiers. Let's get it down to Dolson and Gore.
Caspanify probably felt like he was the only guy who stepped up in game number 1. The Chernobog 5-3-1 by the end of it, but still not enough. Nearly ended the game, though. That's important to remember. Still close, regardless of the outcome of the game. Dolson, Gore, Miser, Doug bringing you game number 2. Gore, a couple pivots here in this game, mainly in the mid lane for Ferricrick. No more Nuwa. This Giannis, I have to admit, has become one of my favorite picks just because of the versatility, the identity of a team fight around this pick, the creativity that it allows teams to have is just so much fun to watch.
It just creates, like you said, such an interesting dynamic in the game. And Dave, he was one of the top picks in the SPL all of last week. And that isn't just that Heroin had a lot of games. Granted, he did get it a suspiciously large amount of them. But the fact is that it seems like whether he's flavor of the month right now, I don't know. Whether he just happens to be really good, I think that might be the answer. That capability, it's so difficult to lock people down. Scylla, though, is one of the few who I think can do it pretty regularly. Same thing with Ymir, as well as Sarpei. It's not going to be the easiest thing, but a slow so that when Ferricrick gets through the wall, you can chase him down, or some sort of route to stop him, body blocks, walls, things like that. To block off those portals are going to be very helpful overall. It might not stop the damage from something, say, like the ult in the late game, but that does mean Preds could stop like these Fire Giant saving plays or maybe big rotations. All these little interesting dynamics that could come through. I actually really like Preds being on the Ymir to maybe help counter those.
Setup then arrives thanks to the Ymir. Preds blinks forward, gets the freeze, gets the damage onto Caspanify on the end of it, so half HP on a Caspanify. It's going to be the same hunters matching up with one another. Both supports have swapped, though. Ymir, of course, for Preds, as we've now seen. Agent needs a little wind-up time to get that full kit ready to go, ready to counter-engage on the Shang Chen. The ultimate will be game-changing for Agent once you're able to reach that team fight phase. Gore, you start to look at the early pace of this game, though. Obviously, we're a minute and 45 seconds in, so not all that much to hang our hats on just yet, but it was a very quiet game. Agent will eat half of his HP. Very quiet game in game number one from kind of both of the junglers. Didn't it feel like Sarpei was over in the soul lane a good bit? But that was kind of it. I think maybe now with Sorega on this Hunbats, you need to see more in this early game because of the potential of that Fear No Evil and really getting the ball rolling for the rest of your team.
I would have said we needed to see more out of the set last game. I think had a pretty decent early game, but didn't translate that into much. And I think it goes doubly here, right? Serica, like, you have the best teamfight ultimate in the game when it comes down to, like, that one is maybe up for debate now. Olarun probably takes the cake for that because that Sanctified Fields is just nuts.
Imagine them together.
With it. But, yeah, you throw this Fear No Evil down, and it is going to be one of the best objective, not necessarily secures, but peelers for your team. It's really good in terms of ganks. Like, I need to see Seriga be in this game, in their face, most of the time. Don't sacrifice all your farm for it, but, like, be prepared to fight. Don't calm down and relax. I mean, Agent Caspanified, they suffered early on last game. They're suffering early on this game. When you hit level 5, make your way over to the duo lane and kind of remind them why the jungle exists.
Yeah, it's been a quiet year so far for overall big early duo lane ganks. Most of the time I feel like the supports will kind of poke and prod at one another. Maybe a jungler every once in a while will rotate over, but more often than not the supports with that level 4, level 5, level 6 mark start to rotate out of that lane, and then maybe for jungle invades, purple buff invades later on. This one we'll start to see a lot of that pressure. Preds, just a moment ago, secured about the slowest purple buff invade I've ever seen, but enough pressure from Streak up onto Caspanify gives Ymir the Clay Soldier's purple buff. So it's more of the same from what we saw in game one, except kind of flipped this time, where Streak up and Preds had the pressure. It is going to be a walk-in and an invade, though, for the Clay Soldiers. So, Gore, if it's not a gank, doesn't always have to be a gank, but getting some pressure, keeping the farm out of the pockets, the Preds and Streak up, good start for Sorega.
Yeah, I like, again, the farm going the way it is. It's enough. You're level 6 now. You've got your ult. Start looking for those picks. Of course, the minute I look at the map, there's not a single target that's anywhere near available. I saw a couple of people backing, but everybody else was at their tier 1 tower. You have to read the room a little bit. Like, that's going to have to happen here. But I expect to see this Yanis combo alongside this Hunbats really take home the cake with how much damage they can do and a good combo. And so I'm just watching for Seriga. I need you to be a little more proactive and carry this team into the late game. Where Sibi, we just saw what an Achilles can do late game, so I expect to see something really solid there. And Caspanify will really be able to pick up some of the slack as this game goes on as well, because, again, Chernobog at level 5, even with that ult online, that's not really where you're looking to be the end-all, be-all of the game. You're really waiting for those late games. I'm interested to see if the build changes at all here for Caspanify. I know it's going to change for Ferricrik, not opting into that Book of Thoth early on, but what Caspanify does late game will also impact that.
Absolutely. It's a greater Scorpion Gore that spawns and immediately taken by Pandemonium without even a second thought. They are waiting for it to spawn. As a matter of fact, sometimes we see some caution around starting up and completing those objectives, but not here, not this time. Ferricrik on a bit of a journey here. Red buff being looked at, not available. Another minute or so until that one respawns. Now Ferricrik in behind Preds and Joshi. Could the Vines be ever so important here? It's going to be the Sentinels away from Joshi, but the Wild World Tour of Ferricrik comes to an end with not much to show for it.
I mean, this is a good play from both teams. Very clean in terms of whether or not they're going to engage, disengage, but I'm a little worried. Again,
could be a
like,
fight.
Anytime I see level 7 on Hunbats and I haven't seen a Fear No Evil, something I think has gone wrong.
Well, he had to jump and then blink and then escape because Preds just kind of walked at him. That's what the Ymir brings. You're fighting in this kind of winding jungle that Season 8 brings. These walls are going to be ever so important. We've seen Cabrakan see a rise in play as well just because of that ultimate. The ability to lock down these small, tight corridors, ever so important. Agent gets walled off, ulted down by Sarpei. Sarpei will use the beats to avoid the CC from Agent, but no kill just yet. The last bit of damage just wasn't there. Joshi a little bit too far away. But the early jungle pressure comes out of Sarpei and Preds.
That tantalizing first blood still on the map. Both Greater Scorpions, at least initially, go on the side of Pandemonium. Again, at this point, it's not much, and honestly, there's not a whole lot to break into that eggshell.
But it's honest work.
It's, well, yeah, like that's kind of what it is, right? Like, it literally is just honest work for them. They're going out. They're literally farming the map. They're not getting any crazy kills. It's not big and flashy. They're just winning these neutral objectives. They get their enhanced buffs this time around. Again, in tiers of them, I feel like it's usually like purple, blue, red, yellow is kind of like the biggest enhancements. Blue. That CDR, maybe I put more weight onto that than others. That one's definitely up for grabs. But like your speed buff isn't necessarily going to be the biggest buff, and like the red buff damage is nice, but it's not the end-all be-all, not the same as the attack speed that you get off that purple buff when it's enhanced. So it'll be a good news for Streak Up when he picks up that one after it respawns. But having all four enhanced at this point is hands down better. It doesn't matter whether or not, you know, like speed
Certainly
buff,
not worse.
it's slightly better than it might be. It's just like, well, they're guaranteed to not have it. You got the experience from the Scorpions themselves. You're in a good spot here if you're Pandemonium. It's not a whole ton of gold. What, 200, if even, at that, bouncing between these two teams? So it's still completely a coin flip right now. Agent and Saraga have really good engage, but Agent doesn't have the blink just yet, and Saraga just doesn't seem to want to fight. Maybe they're waiting a little bit more to have more backup for them. Farrakrick there backed off to those back camps, but there's only so much waiting you can do before Pandemonium, in my eyes, really start to run away with it. Joshi's already level 9.
Here we go. It's the engage. Fear no evil. Look at that. The combo is in. Farrakrick hits a couple with the through space at times. Sarpei has to escape. Will he? The execute from Sibi not used until Preds is on the other side. The Achilles off to a fantastic start. Clay Soldiers beckon Pandemonium in. And it's a 2-kill swing.
That's the glory. Like, if you're gonna play timid enough that the other team literally thinks you will not fight them. And
right.
So when they get aggressive there, Sibi with a great rotation over there. But again, Joshi at level 9, I expected a little more. Wasn't able to get the starting kill that he wanted to. I think it was Saraga that he had tried to aim for. Maybe it was Agent. But wasn't able to connect there with the ult entirely. I think he hits Saraga and takes him down from what was full HP. Makes it a little more dangerous for Clay Soldiers. But without that reset, wasn't able to find the damage. And that opened up Agent and Saraga to just turn that around. Big team fight ultimates. You got to be a little more careful with them. I see all 4 pairs of beats still up for Pandemonium. I don't think anybody was expecting to walk out of that one alive. So, granted, that means Clay Soldiers don't have an advantage for the next fight, but it does mean that they get to walk away happy from that one. Right now, Saraga, like, as the team rotates in, you get a, again, 500 gold lead. That's that first blood bounty. I'm looking for more ults when they come up, and right now, I'm starting to think of Furies. I'm starting to think of Pyromancers. He's maybe a little bit easier to confirm than that first Fury. But they can really start playing the objectives the way they had started to during last game. But I want to see him keep up that pressure. Do not give way to Pandemonium, because otherwise, again, Heimdall's going to get really solid as he levels up. Same thing there for the Scylla. They're going to get increasingly deadly, and they're going to be able to start looking for these objectives too.
The secure still feels like it's there for Pandemonium. Farrakrick has an ultimate that can contest with a little bit of burst damage. Agent looking for a miracle play here. It's a freeze on the other end. Crush is there. Pandemonium get the Fury, but Agent took so much damage there. Crush on the other end. Agent leaps away from it. Fear no evil from Saraga is going to open up the fight in a beautiful wall from Preds. Forces the jump out, but Sarpei is here with an ultimate of his own. But now the Nem in all alone, but Joshi sends out a Crush, and here comes the rest of the reinforcements. Pandemonium close the gap, get the Fury, and it's a 2-for-1 trade. Maybe even worse now that Caspanify is slowed.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead. There's a conversation we had in Game 1. It was support for jungle when Pandemonium got the... They're the ones who lost Preds, and they got the Gold Fear. That was not a worthwhile fight overall for Clay Soldiers. I think Clay Soldiers afterward were able to win a big one in mid, but it took a little bit to get there. This time, it's support for 3 plus the Fury. That's just good for Pandemonium. You're able to pick up 1 overall in terms of Pred, but look, Pred's got his stacking item online. Like, he's happy. He's more more than happy to let them continue going that way, especially if it's going to lead 2 kills over there into the pockets of Streak Up. Should allow Streak Up to finish his boots pretty soon, as well as potentially start looking towards those next tier of items. When he goes in the Wind Demon, it's going to take a little bit before he gets to that point, but that's where we really saw this Heimdall start to step up and prop up. It allows Joshi to get this Spear of Desolation, did not opt for the Rada Tahuti rush just yet, did start with that Trinket Artifact at the very bottom there, and so he's going to be able to get that again. Another huge power spike for him that's going to be coming up soon. It just feels like, especially when Kana starts rotating on this King Arthur, I don't know how well Clay Soldiers, even with 2 of the best teamfight ultimates in the game, are going to be able to handle this. They have to be able to stack up. Agent got too much damage too early on there. In the future, you know, for him to look into it, he needs to be able to go in with his team behind him, throw people into the background. That will be easy setup for Farrakrick, same thing for Saraga, and that's where I think this damage is going to come from. Their team fight, if Agent is able to be more proactive, I'm looking at level 12 when he gets those blinks online, ideally if he goes for blink. That's where I think we'll see a little bit more of him.
Good wall used by Pred, since the leap from Saraga on the other end. There is a blink ready, just in case the Hunbats needs to get in or out. Pyromancer crushes down. I'm a Monster used, and Pandemonium will get the Pyro, but it's good Fear No Evil. It gets Preds in an awkward spot. It's going to be at least a 1-for-none trade for Clay Soldiers, make it a 2-for-none trade. Now Joshi puts down the crush. I don't think he has the legs to get out of it. Sibi on a killing spree. Gore, these fights so back and forth. One team overextends on an objective, big swing one way. The next team goes in, maybe overextends on an objective, and it's a big swing the other way. It seems like neither team can get their footing underneath them.
Yeah, every ult used on the side of Clay Soldiers, but if you walk away with 3 kills and you're able to start tearing down at a tier 2 tower, pretty worthwhile. Sibi looks to be going to maybe defend against what was Streak Up, but this is becoming even more deadly here for Pandemonium. The team fight ults, they're difficult to deal with, and even though Joshi didn't have to use his beats, same thing there, like Streak Up kept his, unfortunately burned for Sarpei. I'm interested to see how well they're fighting these team fight engagements, just because of the fact that Agent and Saraga are going to be guaranteed burning your beads every single time you go on the engage. And there hasn't been as much peel. Pred's, again, a little bit too far forward. It's exactly what you said, in that it just feels like one team overextends, really wants to confirm themselves an objective, and ends up falling behind because of it. Now it's kind of a toss-up, still a lead for Pandemonium, but again, not anywhere near as massive as before. Joshi just kind of out of nowhere demolishes Farrakrick.
I don't even know what just happened there. I mean, it must have been a Sick'em Crush, I'm a Monster combo. That's the old solo kill. You don't see those often in the mid lane. But that is one over to Pandemonium. So now for 30 seconds, this map feels a little bit more comfortable for Pandemonium. You're not immediately worried about that through space and time, ushering in a full fury of team fight from the enemy team. We'll see what Pandemonium are able to get done with things here. Luckily for Clay Soldiers, there's no Fury just yet. Another minute or so on that. Fire Giant a bit too early in the game to be looking towards it. Maybe try to invade on some back camps, but Pandemonium don't really see that opportunity. So all in all, just the pick. Not much on the back end of it, swinging towards Pandemonium. But that does show that immediate burst damage that this build has for Joshi there out of the mid lane. I'm surprised, though, that Kana's been able to keep up with Sibi here. Gore 3-0-1 on this Achilles. Shifter Shield, Void Shield. So plenty of physical power, a little physical defense in there as well to keep Kana at bay. But Kana with the Reinforced Greaves, Stone of Gaia, Glad Shield still just feels just as strong despite not having those extra 3 kills.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to see when Kana joins these fights. Like, Kana was a big talking point last game. I think he's going to be a big talking point this game. They have just been a phenomenal player for this team and just in general in the SCC for a while. Yep. And that was a big difference maker. You know, Sibi and Caspanify being in that fight there on right versus, you know, where Kana and Streak Up are. Those make big differences for them. Now all 5 members of Pandemonium are actually standing strong. This Oni Fury is going to be a big swing for whoever can take it.
Feels bad for Suriga. As of right now, 3,000 damage even on the Hunbats. That's lowest in the game. Everyone else from Pandemonium up above, everyone except for Caspanify, who's in danger of falling behind the Ymir as well. It's Sibi, 4 members of Pandemonium, and then kind of a dead tie between Kaspanify and Preds on the other side. Pandemonium have been doing the damage in these fights, granted not massively, but they are in the lead in that department, certainly indicative of the way that this game has gone. Pandemonium certainly more aggressively positioned around this Oni Fury. Preds is going to get rooted down by Agent, but it's an immediate stun and the damage turns around. Joshi, close by, you want to save the Amma Monster for the team fight, but if it's just the Fury that you have in mind, you'll have the confirm here if you're Pandemonium. Sarpei, Ferricrick alone over in the mid lane. Very tentative, Gordon. Neither team wanting to overextend.
Good walls. Not quite good freezes here from Prez. I think that's twice now I've seen him not quite get the target he's trying to lock down. And with the big rotation from Kana, like, look, you're hovering over here. You have to get something out of this. Otherwise, everyone's just been dawdling around on the left-hand side of the map, not doing much in terms of farm or anything like that. At least the Oracles are coming up. You've got mid-pressure there in the waves, and now they've got Agent.
There's a combo.
Ooh,
I'm a monster. Crush gets nothing, so now Joshi has to wait for those cooldowns through space and time. Also doesn't connect, but now Ferricrick can join the fray from the mid lane. Streak up, kiting on backwards, finds the opening kill here in this fight. Pandemonium have the only kill, but they do not have the health bars. It's Clay Soldiers attempting to clean up on the end of this fight, but Sarpei will do one better. Pandemonium 2-for-1 swing. Preds, Kana, Sarpei all limping away.
They're in this area. Look, Sarpei didn't back, Kana didn't back. Even though you don't necessarily have your Ymir, they're still going to peel for this Fury just to make sure, even if it costs them their life, although Sarpei ideally walks out of this alive, that it's not going to be the end-all be-all.
Wow, and Kana will get another kill, makes it a 3-for-1 swing here at the end of this fight. It's only Joshi who's dead. Streak Up is able to sustain thanks to the Devourer's Gun with fully stacked up Executioner in there as well. Fantastic synergy between those items, and now Streak Up the rest of Pandemonium. Without Joshi, you're going to be able to look at the Oni Fury, they'll be able to get the Oni Fury, and Kana might just solo out Kaspanify as well. This King Arthur feels oppressive, just one more ranged slash, and Kana's got it 1 by 1, Gore. Clay Soldiers walked in to die.
I mean, look, Streak Up joins the fight, Kana joins the fight, and all of a sudden things are a lot harder for the Clay Soldiers, and that's with Joshi missing his ult, right? I mean, there was a huge chunk of damage that was not there for Pandemonium, and they're still able to walk away from it. Not exactly happy, I would argue maybe limping, right? Low health bars, Joshi died. It wasn't a clean fight by any means, but they still are able to peel off and burn down a lot of members of Clay Soldiers and get the objective at the end of the day. That is going to be good for them. And it gives them a clean amount of focus. Look, all the pressure, it's going to help alleviate some of that pressure on left, those waves that are pushing up that were maybe threatening that tier 1 tower. Same thing for right. But here in mid, it's going to be a distraction factor for Ferricrick. It's going to open up things like the Pyromancer, I was going to say, as well as that Fire Giant. With one more big team fight, it's not quite, I know, about the same time as game number 1 for Pandemonium if they decide to push for it anytime soon, in the next couple of minutes at least. They could make a big swing in their favor. There's a lot of gold still on the map, Dave. 2 tier 2s, or I'm sorry, both towers, I should say, taken down there in mid by Clay Soldiers earlier, but they've got 4 towers standing on Pandemonium, 5 towers there for Clay Soldiers. Whoever gets this FG buff is going to find a lot of gold in their pocket. And with that, what, 2 to 3k gold lead right now, about 3,000 on the side of Pandemonium, it's a little more in their favor, especially if they can continue fighting in that same 5 state they just did around that Fury.
Yep. Clay Soldiers hoping that the rise now of the damage that we've seen from the Hunbats, 6,000 damage, nearly 7,000 damage since the last time we checked in. Hydra's fully stacked Transcendent Shifter Shield, excuse me. It'd be scary if you could have multiple Shifter Shields, I think, on your side. But Sorega starting to do more damage in this game, getting more involved. Haven't quite seen the full combo of this Clay Soldiers team fight just yet. We have seen this, the ultimate up from Kana, I'm a monster, used, but Ferricrick was already dead to rights in the mid lane. Now Joshi stunned down. Sentinels get him off to the side, but Sibi will complete the kill there. There's a Fear No Evil, and it's great onto Pandemonium. Execute good. Double kill from Sibi. The solo laner's running wild in this game, but Streak Up, near full HP, has yet to be touched in the back line of this fight. Sarpei will solo out Kaspanify over in the mid lane. And this is how these fights go, it feels like. A good engage from the Clay Soldiers, and then it all just kind of disintegrates.
I mean, yeah, you're still able to pull back a couple of kills there in favor of yourselves for Clay Soldiers, but it's that crumbling nature afterward. Good beads burning from them as well, but it just seems to fall apart in terms of where they want to focus. And it's Streak Up and Kana. I mean, like, this is the combo at this point. If Joshi is going to die early on because of the focus onto the Scylla, then these two have to step up the way they are right now, and they're living up to exactly what you would need, right? Joshi is not necessarily having a bad game. Joshi is getting targeted out, and that is allowing Streak Up to be 5-0-3 and Kana to be 2-0-4. They're playing clean on their own, but because Clay Soldiers are so focused on burning Scylla early, it's making it so much easier for Streak Up to just chill in the back line and be Heimdall.
Yeah, Streak Up's having a fantastic set so far. So is Kana. Joshi, not the same flourish as game one, but still out there doing some decent damage. Tied with Ferricrick on the other side on the damage chart, so both mid laners effectively canceling one another out. Sibby Gore feels like has been the only driving force for this Clay Soldiers team, dragging the Clay Soldiers kicking and screaming into these team fights. 5-1-1, 3,000 damage higher, 2,000 maybe, than anyone else here in this game. And shows maybe the strength of the Achilles. We didn't see this pick all that much in week one of the SPL, if I'm remembering correctly, but maybe now with the way the Bluestone and Bluestone Brooch apparently feels and looks on this pick, something we should get used to.
I mean, it's someone who can be game-changing. He's flexible as well. We've seen him, I think, more, at least in the last week, in the solo lane than we've really gotten to see than in the jungle, but something that we've had to talk about in the past. I think we've even seen someone like Awesome Jake potentially run the Achilles as a support. Like, not often do you get to see him flex all the way over there, but knowing that it's as flexible of a pick and as impactful as we've seen so far, I mean, this is 2 games in a row where Achilles, separate from the player, has had a really, really solid game. It just makes it a more, I would argue, surefire pickup. I feel like solo lane, like Warriors right now, feels very versatile. We're still seeing like your Achilles, your King Arthurs, but we've had a lot of flexibility over there in the solo lane. It's making things a lot fresher in that 1v1 nature than I think some of these guys are used to. Of course, here, look, King Arthur versus Achilles. Drop me in Season 7. You're guaranteed to see this kind of matchup. And it looks like the ward coverage is going to pay off here for Clay Soldiers. They might want to go for a Fire Giant. At least force a fight out.
What an interesting call that would be. Clay Soldiers have been engaging, but then feels like they've been losing the fight. The delay and then the re-engage from Pandemonium has been so strong. Maybe a bit of what Aggro was talking about on the desk with this Hunbat's pick, where it's all that kind of burst damage. You drop down the Fear No Evil, and then you kind of just got to chill and wait for your abilities to come back online. And so we've seen that, the initial burst of what feels like a great fight from the Clay Soldiers, but Pandemonium had been able to withstand that. So had that Fire Giant been pulled, I certainly would have been very, very surprised there. Pandemonium have not had that much of a problem finding their way into the backline. Ferricrick, tough game, 1-4. 3 blinks tend to do that to you. When one of them is a King Arthur, one's a Nemesis, and the other is a Ymir. Everything probably feels a little bit scarier in those moments. Pyromancer respawn, so that's probably the objective we start to look at here. The immediate pit ward coverage gets cleared out by Pandemonium, so Clay Soldiers have to just assume what objectives are and are not being done. Right now it's the Pyromancer that is being done, and nobody will step forward, and good ward control, good patience score miser from Pandemonium to get the Pyro.
I mean, at this point, they have a lot of damage on the board, and I like this from Streak Up. If a ward gets placed or if they see anything, that looks like you're attacking the Fire Giant, but no one's actually pulled it, so you don't have to worry about the damage coming through. Of course, that bait can also work doubly. Now they think, oh, they're just trying to bait us in, and you can just straight up take the Fire Giant. Good freeze from Preds to start it off.
Ferricrick's alone on the left-hand side of the fight here. Has done some damage to Joshi and Streak Up. Preds alone uses his ultimate. Stun down Sibby, looking for the kill through space and time. Oh! Snipes out onto Joshi. Preds will likely escape from this fight, but it's a double kill from Ferricrick. Suddenly the Giannis starting to absolutely swing. Sarpei, Kana, the last 2 in this fight. No more carries for Pandemonium. The King Arthur, the jungler, the support, they're going to have to get it done, but instead it's Clay Soldiers who win another fight in another game. Oh, it's a massive stun, though, from Kana. Is that enough? Can the King Arthur 1v3? He'll sure try.
He'll try.
The spin to win is out, but the damage is there. Triple kill from Sorega, and Clay Soldiers grab the deicide.
I mean, that was well played. Ferricrick is the
gross.
initial change maker in that one, because Spanify is flirting with Doom and Gloom right here. Yeah, I don't think you're able to do that one. They almost died to that as well. Could have been very dangerous. Still, backing off. They win the fight. They don't manage to get too much afterward. They really, at the end of the day, that fight pulls back a lead. Like, Pandemonium, it started to feel as though they were running away with the game, not necessarily in a way that is really easy to quantify. Just they had a little more gold, they have more towers taken down. It felt like if they win that fight, they win the Fire Giant, they win the game. Now it's a little more shaky, but Joshi back. Joshi has his ult. Streak Up's going to teleport in. They're going for this.
Streak Up will not steal away the FG. Clay Soldiers respawn, regroup, and re-engage on the Fire Giant. It's a basic attack from the Hunbat to grab the FG for the Clay Soldiers. So this is the biggest swing. This is probably the most comfortable Clay Soldiers have felt in the 2 games that we've had here so far. Mid lane Phoenix is open. Both towers still remain on the left-hand side. Tier 2 over on the right-hand side. So the Clay Soldiers now have a chance to show their mettle at the siege. Gold about dead even here, Gore, but the Fire Giant, definitely a big swing. Advantage probably to the Clay Soldiers here under most of these sieges.
Yeah, last time Preds died incredibly quickly, I think, and a lot faster than anyone would have expected there. Doesn't have a lot of magical protection in there, and Ferricrik has a good amount of burn, but Sibi, Saraga, Spanify going to be affected by the Sovereignty now, so Preds may be able to survive a little bit faster. I'm surprised to see them push up this far against a team where all 5 have Fire Giant. This feels like a bad idea through and through. That should be a very easy kill. And yeah, you skip the Primal, you take Tier 1, you go to Tier 2, you try to push Phoenix. Depending on the back off here for Clay Soldiers, they might pick up a Fury, or they might bid a Phoenix, or they might get both. But definitely take the towers first, especially if they're winning this cleanly. I mean, Pandemonium, I don't know what happened in the last couple of minutes, but it feels like they just haven't figured out how they want to engage anymore.
Ferricrik woke up, had his coffee, the through space and time in that Fire Giant fight hit. Through space and time just now, melted down onto Streak Up. 15 seconds remaining on the respawn from Preds. It's going to be a 4v5. Phoenix, artificial 5th man now for Pandemonium, trying desperately to defend the left-hand side of the map here. You don't necessarily have to sell all out for this. If you're able to get a kill or 2, that'd be awesome, but it is the worst Phoenix to lose, Gore, but instead Clay Soldiers slow playing it, waiting for that minion wave to work in.
It's this awkward moment, right? You've got all this Fire Giant, but you haven't been winning so steadily that you think you can go in and just win a Phoenix fight, so they're not risking it. But these minions are getting killed off way too quickly. Like, unless Agent or someone's going to go in, Agent went for the Sundering Spear, so he doesn't even have Blink to close the gap, which maybe means Agent steps in, then you get Ferricrik or Saraga going to the back. They use the through time and space as well. This might just be a defense for Pandemonium. It feels like Clay Soldiers are too scared to go in.
Granted, Sarpei used the Nemesis ultimate as well, so that's now down for this next fight. Big pieces of utility now gone. Fear No Evil connects onto just Sarpei, but Sarpei walks away from it. In goes Preds, but he's spun around by Agent on the other side. Spanify grabs that kill. Sarpei is low here. He's flirting with death, being this far forward. The double dash, though, to save his life. Kana comes back, but he's quite low here. All the health bars for Pandemonium are at this rate. Clay Soldiers work in. Double kill now for Spanify. Joshi is able to turn one around on the Saraga. Into the fountain he goes. It's a 4 versus 2 on the siege.
I mean, they could still try to ward this off. I think you're going to lose this Phoenix, but that, I mean, at the end of the day, still not great for Pandemonium. I was trying to cushion the blow, but then I looked down and I saw 3 people dead.
They got 1 FG.
Usually it is just not going to work out well for you. 1 Fire Giant is all it takes for Clay Soldiers. They might be able to get the second Phoenix as well. Preds is just about to respawn. Really, you just want Joshi and Streak Up to not die here. That is the maximum goal.
Wow, the sidesteps from Joshi leaves Streak Up out to dry underneath the mid lane Phoenix. Look at though, 20 seconds remaining on the other respawns. Big crush, I'm a monster, waiting to go. Does not use it, maybe needed to channel the damage there. Now it's Preds against the worlds. Clay Soldiers have 4 members now walking on into the Titan room. Kana Sarpei 5 seconds away, half HP onto the Titan. Spanify full HP in the back, and the damage is there. Clay Soldiers in 30 minutes take game 2.
I mean, that's just a good turnaround from them. Good big team fight ultimates on there really kind of help paving the way for it. If that Fire Giant does not have a Fear No Evil, Streak Up potentially walks in and steals it, right? There's so many little moments, once again, that are making bigger differences in the grand scheme of this game. But a lot of it has to do with Ferricrick's ult. You had highlighted it at that Fire Giant. Joshi goes into the I'm a Monster, is looking to turn around and get a huge burst of damage, and gets erased from the map. And then Ferricrick, from that point forward, was just a beast to be handled. And it feels like it just fell apart. They didn't know what to do. Joshi couldn't be in part of the fights. And so Pandemonium fall apart.
It's such a binary feeling sometimes, it feels like, with the Giannis on your team. If those through spaces and times are feeling good, then the rest of that team fight suddenly feels better. If you're able to start off an engage with a massive chunk of damage and then immediate follow-up from the rest of your team, tends to go in your favor. Clay Soldiers tie up the set here, 1 apiece, tiebreaker game after this break.
Well, Aggro, we are getting the close, even match I think we asked for and expected coming into this one, aren't we, so far? I mean, in Game 1, it's Pandemonium, and they almost lose at the tail end of Clay Soldiers, and then here in Game 2, it's relatively even for a good while, but I think eventually Clay Soldiers do start pulling away, and you do have to wonder, can you afford to give Ferricrick this Giannis? He maybe didn't put up the biggest numbers, but he did look super comfortable on it with setting up the team. What was your read here on this one?
I think that you have the exact same read that I do, is that even if you're just waiting around, and I mean, look, Clay Soldiers ended up losing almost every objective through the early to mid game, and Pandemonium had a decent lead, and then Ferricrick just crushed Joshi with an ultimate at the Fire Giant fight, and then Clay Soldiers won basically every fight after that. I just think that this is a pick that he's too good on to really allow him to have. And when you combine it with this Chernobog, you know, I probably didn't put enough respect on it after Game 1 for Kaspanify, because he did have a good Game 1 performance. I thought they just might want to change it up based on the outcome. It's just an impossible backline to dive between Chernobog and Giannis. You just can't get away from these gods, and they can just go over the top of your dive. So Kana had a great game on this King Arthur, and it just didn't really matter, because by the time he got to anybody else, the rest of his team was just toast by that point. It was impressive work from the Clay Soldiers in this one.
Yeah, you think Jossie thought he was going to get to use I'm a Monster in that team fight? Unlucky.
Well, he technically did get to use it.
Right, he was up in it.
Get to left click it. Right, yeah.
Unlucky for him there on that one, as Ferricrick was able to hit these big shots, man, on the back of it. The Fearful Evils are big in this game, as you already covered, because Spanify put up a monster KDA in this one, was really there to get the kills for them too. I think what we are really seeing, though, is that it really does come down to which one of these teams is able to find a bit more of that late game pressure. They're hitting break points in this game where things are largely even, or maybe even favoring one of these teams, and then it doesn't take much for these team fights to start cascading in one team's favor, and they close it out from there. It just means these teams are a little too good in the late game for you to let one team fight kind of dictate how the game ends up going. And that wasn't necessarily the case in this last one. Clay Soldiers were, as you kind of said, a bit ahead coming into that late game point, but once Joshy does get flattened right away, or once these members get taken out, it's a little too easy for Clay Soldiers to then close that fight out right behind it. So now we're running in these picks and bans. Maybe you don't want to let Joshy have Scylla, and you don't want to let Farrakrick have this Giannis, but you still have to ban Athena and Tsukuyomi and all these other top-tier picks right at the start of the draft. There's not a whole lot of room to maneuver in this next picks and ban phase.
No, I don't think there is either, but Pandemonium has their choice of first or second pick, so I'm curious on what they want to do, because if you go second pick and you try and ban the Giannis, you hope that they don't take the Scylla, then you might be able to get yourself in a situation where you can get Scylla and Achilles. Achilles is 2-0 so far in this set, and Sibby looked much more impactful on that pick than he did on the Cullen that he had in game number 1. So I'm interested in what the mid lane bans are going to be, if any, and where this Achilles ends up.
Let's hop on in then to those picks and bans for this critical now game number 3, the rubber match. And remember how we set this up way back at the top of this set? Clay Soldiers, while they are 2-1, you do wonder if it's quite the same 2-1 in quotes as what Pandemonium have, since Pandemonium have that win over Elysium, and Clay Soldiers kind of beat Just F-Sig and some of the other teams at the very bottom. I think this is a big set for both of these teams to dictate kind of their momentum going forward, and even add legitimacy is too strong of a word, but add on to some validation of what they've done so far at the start of this phase.
Absolutely, I completely agree. These middle-of-the-pack games always end up being super important because these are the ones that you can't afford to lose. So I think that this one bears a lot of weight to it. So I'm excited to see what they do. I like the Giannis first ban right away by Pandemonium. Yep. They're not messing around. They have no intention of giving that over. I'd anticipate that this has been Athena, though they also banned Tyr in game number 2 and kind of forced Clay Soldiers to ban away the Athena. With Pandemonium banning it, this does mean that Clay Soldiers are a little bit safer on what they're going to end up with. I think that in this position, you didn't ban Scylla last game, but maybe you could ban it. They go with the Aphrodite again, and this is what they didn't ban in game 2. Pandemonium still top pick Scylla, and don't really worry about that Aphrodite at all. So I'm a little bit surprised to see that Aphro be in. Even if it's King Arthur or something, something a little bit different, if you expect them to take Scylla anyways, then you don't really need to worry about that Aphrodite.
But they take the opportunity to prioritize Achilles. As you covered already, he has been kind of on the winning team, both sides. I don't know if it's fair to say the decider, but he's had good games for sure in both of these games here so far. Kana and Sibby both looking great on it, though Kana looked good on the King Arthur as well. Now this Sobek, though, that is the ban that had to be pushed out so that Giannis could get banned away from Farrakrick. Now we'll get a chance to see in the hands of Agent just how much value Panda really was taken away from them in those first 2 games when they banned this Sobek out.
I agree. I'm excited to see what Agent can do on it. I do think that Sobek's a top pick right now, and you take the Scylla away from Joshy. Pandemonium kind of playing with fire a little bit and say, all right, we're not going to top pick it. We just don't think you'll take it on the next 2. Now Joshy has to go a little bit deeper in the god pool, and what does he go to up against Sobek, which is such a hard god to kill the vast majority of the time? No Chernobog pick away either from Pandemonium scares me a little bit. I mean, Caspanify getting that 3 games in a row scares me. If I'm on the other side, I mean, I'm looking at mid laners that I would, I'm trying to think of one that I would love against Sobek, and I can't find one because no god is good against Sobek, and he's just impossible to beat as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it feels like he does a bunch of damage, and I can't kill him in time. There's just no shot, and lurking in the waters can't be peeled unless maybe you're like a mirror or something, and even then, I don't know, not a lot of good options if you're a mid laner going up against that god, so I'm right there with you, aggro. But we do get to see Apollo finally locked in here in this one. It's been Chernobog picked by Clay Soldiers, and then Apollo Danzo banned out. This is going to change Clay Soldiers' whole secondary approach, and I think that they're kind of coming away the beneficiary of these adjustments so far. I know Pandemonium's draft is good, but it's Clay Soldiers that get to kind of keep their rhythm with Chernobog, take away the Scylla. Now they have Sobek, and these last 2 bans get to be switched up. They had to ban Danzo and Apollo in the secondary ban phase every single time. Now they get to take a shot here at mid, perhaps, and limit out Joshy, or even support. And it looks like that's the idea here with this Ares.
Yeah, the Ares ban is a little bit interesting. You do have 3 CC immune ultimates on the other side. Ares, I think, is so feast or famine. They're putting a lot of respect on the other side, because if that Ares falls behind against Scylla, Sobek, Chernobog, he is just, it's free food for them anytime he steps up. So I'm a little surprised to the Ares ban. I think I would have probably risked it and hoped that they would have gone with something like Ares that we could just pluck into Sikkim Crush over and over and over again and get some pretty easy kills.
Yeah, I wonder, if that's not like maybe Umoja Morgan or whoever you think is the next best mage up in Joshy's hands, right? That was what I kind of thought they're going to use those secondary bans for, and why I was a bit curious about Panda's prioritization. But Placeholders go for Ares Umoja. It's all entirely on making sure they limit Preds over there in that support role. And now this tier that we saw earlier being hovered. This is something else Pandamonium felt that he had to take away in those first ban phases, and now Placeholders are grabbing it. I want to make sure Pandemonium have a good draft right now, especially for how the set has gone, but it kind of feels like Clay Soldiers are getting just about everything they want.
I agree. I think the Clay Soldiers likely very, very happy with how this draft has played out so far, because maybe with the tier ban or the tier pick rather, the Ares ban makes a little bit more sense. But overall, I still think that Clay Soldiers should be very happy. As Joshy goes to the Raijin, this is one of the better picks, I think, against a god like Sobek, because you have the leap and the ultimate to try and immune that pluck. If your beads are down, he deals good damage, but is it good enough damage to take down a tank boot Sobek in this tier? These are pretty slippery picks, and Raijin, you kind of need to be pretty accurate with a lot of your stuff. It's not, narrow raw beam style accuracy, but it's pretty easy to juke Raiju with a lot of movement speed. It's pretty easy to juke those Taiko drum shots if you don't know exactly where they're going and you have a whole lot of mobility. Joshy's consistent damage output in this game is going to be very, very crucial to Pandemonium's success.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about how well we saw Farrakrook delete Joshy mid-ult. Don't you think that's still pretty possible with the way these mid-lane picks went out? It's Raijin slowly listing along in Taiko drums, and I'm a monster having a pretty free target. Gotta hope that that isn't the way that one goes for them. So it's Xing Chen to round out this support pick for Pandemonium. We kind of talked about how good this god is back in Game 2. But now it's Loki on the other side for Clay Soldiers. And a bit of a different look Loki than you're used to, certainly from Season 7. This Loki kind of has to stick in there a little bit longer, but can still be a nuisance. How do you expect him to play here for Clay Soldiers?
You gotta play it nice and slow because you have such good front line and you have such good initiation. You don't need Loki to be your initiator at all here for Clay Soldiers. So in my mind, Saraga should really play these team fights very slowly. Look for those really, really excellent flanks around the side. Let Raijin get plucked, and he's got a beads jump away, and that's when you go in and capitalize. I think you've got to be patient here on this Loki pick because there's so much damage and so much CC from Pandemonium's composition that if you go in a little bit too early, you can very easily get exploded on this Loki. He's got to wait and take his time and come in at the right moments.
Patience going to be key here in game number 3. It is Dolson, Gore, and Doug to take us into the action.
Yeah, Finch takes away my intro. Now I don't have to introduce ourselves again. It is! Well, I was about to do it again anyway. Unbelievable. Pandemonium versus Clay Soldiers, game number 3. And Gore, one thing remains the same here. There's still a Scylla in this game. And there's still an Achilles in this game. And I think that's what I'm most intrigued in. It's been a quiet early game over in the solo lane. Hell, it's been a quiet early game all over the map with very limited jungle pressure as far as ganks go. But one thing reigns supreme here, and it's the Achilles in the late game has been dominating.
Yeah, I think Kana, especially after the Game 1 performance, kind of showcased what you can do on this pick to its epitome, and I guess at the very, very tippy top of what it is capable of. Because he was, what, 7-0-6? He had some ridiculous slash line that's already kind of been purged from my vein. Because Sibi then had a really good game on this Achilles. But now you get to pair it alongside the set, something that I think is going to flourish alongside something like an Achilles, especially late game. We've seen Sarpei and Kana work together really well. As I skip a couple of words there in that sentence first time around. Everything on Clay Soldiers, in my eyes, is great for a late game fight. I mean, look, Sobek, Scylla, the Chernobog, as well as the tier. Like, that is a good composition. And they almost lost me with the Loki, but I think that Loki, whether or not it's hit or miss, he could have an abysmal game. But I still think the other 4/5 of that team are so solid that it doesn't really matter what Saraga does this game, whether he was on a good pick or not. He could just kind of float through to success because this team will flourish in the, let's say, 15-minute plus mark for me. There's going to be a lot of pressure for him.
Pluck over onto Preds, who will double leap his way away. Both supports down to half HP. You can say the same for Sibi over here in the soul lane. It's kind of been Achilles and then some sort of rotating piece over there as his lane opponent. This time it's a tier. We've already seen King Arthur versus Achilles, so think of that just slightly redone with the way that tier likes to play. Sarpei seeing an opening, invades in onto the back camps here. This is what we saw, though, remember, with Set earlier on here between Pandemonium and Clay Soldiers. Another pluck won't give me the opportunity to speak because Agent will have to use the shell. The body block's fantastic. Gaspanify is going to get rooted down as well, or he would have had he not used the beads, but it's first blood to the Pandemonium duo lane.
I mean, those are just good body blocks. That's more than you could ask for. Sobek's going to pluck you in, and Pred says no, not today, and decides to turn that around on them. Good from Streak Up as well. It's always risky, I guess is the best term for it. If you're Apollo, you have to be very brave and very sure of how this fight is going to go to use the moves to get in there. But it's so much more beneficial, actually, as an engage. Going through the minions benefits you as well, so it's doubly good for Streak Up in a position like that to get as aggressive as he did. And it forces Saraga to start paying attention over here. You lose pressure on the map, maybe you get an invade, maybe you need someone to potentially rotate in, although as you had highlighted, outside of what, Lasbra last week, I think we haven't really seen a whole lot of these 2-3 minute ganks over to the duo lane so far in Season 8. It seems like Saraga as well as Sarpei are going to keep that up.
Agent showing some face here on the purple buff. Both supports in this set so far felt comfortable just walking in, looking for a potential purple buff steal. Agent will have the dash away, should he need it, in order to stay alive here. I'm excited, Gore, to watch this Apollo as the game goes on. It's the first detraction? I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. First removal of Heimdall, or it's our first move away from Heimdall. There you go. That's kind of what I'm going for. From Heimdall versus the Chernobog here in the duo lane. I will admit, though, I mean, so much of what we've seen from Chernobog and why people have liked this pick is it feels like the global pressure has been able to match up with that of something like the Apollo.
Yeah.
Gaspanify obviously had used the ultimate to get in to a couple of those fights last game, but the global pressure didn't necessarily feel oppressive. Gaspanify's just getting it done with good old-fashioned damage, and he just happens to be able to join the fight a little bit quicker. I wonder if this game, with Streak Up on the Apollo, we're going to see a little bit more of that global pressure come out to play, kind of an eye for an eye between both of the hunters.
And I always talk about Heimdall as being super safe, which is what Streak Up has been stuck on playing, although right now it's actually the story of Agent and how he gets plucked back.
Wow, great combo here, and then Streak Up is going to dash in, and another kill to the Pandemonium duo lane. 2-0 for the Apollo. There's some gank over into the solo lane, and it's Clay Soldiers and Saraga who gets the first blood for the Clay Soldier side of things. Getting Kana behind early on, certainly helpful.
I mean, that's a good kill for Saragazek as well. Loki is one of those gods that I'm still, like, I'm marred, right? He's been on the rise. We got to see him, I counted it up, I can't remember, just a few days ago, I think it was maybe 3, maybe up to 5 times throughout literally all of Season 7, and you know what, let's just go ahead and throw in Season 6, and Season 5, and Season 4, and Season 3 at least. I don't know if it goes as far back as Season 2. There might have been some Lokis back then. But for several years, Loki just didn't get played in the Pro League, and we got to see him a little bit towards the tail end of last year. We saw him a little bit, a few times last week. I think it was 1-to-1 from the last 5 years to last week's amount of times played. He's been picked up more now in Season 8 with Saraga picking him up. But I never know how to feel about him, right? Like, my brain still doesn't understand whether or not he's doing well just yet. Good start to the lead, going for the Transcendence build. We'll have to see what he can do in this fight.
Wow, the re-engage from Pandemonium is quick, and it is here. Sibi, Agent, both backpedaling away, lurking in the waters. Is Agent, and he'll do a little bit of burst damage, but not all that much. And set all of this over one little blue buff, and Pandemonium are able to grab it. Clay Soldiers have to back away. It was the mid laner there that really made the difference. Faircrick unable to rotate in, and Pandemonium grab a blue as a result.
A big rotation, all like you said, for that little blue buff, but it strips it away from Sibi, maybe makes the lane a little bit easier, especially if Takana had that early death. Any farm is good farm if you're stripping it away from the right areas, and making Sibi fall even just slightly behind of the lead that he already had. It's going to make it a little easier for Kana to not necessarily count himself out of there. Although, we talked about it earlier, what was the last game? 3-0-1 at one point was Sibi, and Kana was literally on par with him in terms of level. And so I still expect to see Kana be the same impact that we've come to expect out of them throughout this entire game. Just when they start rotating into these fights, more proactive right now for Sarpei. That's not too surprising for me. I was actually wondering which jungler, I should say, we would see get a little more into the fights, cause a little more distress for the other team. And it's not surprising to me that it is going to end up being Sarpei. The set, especially now, level 6, level 7, he really starts to hit his stride and cause a lot of trouble. You can see going for an invade on those back camps once again on the right-hand side. Just little experience strip-aways from Clay Soldiers, which at this point has actually not really done that much. In fact, if anything, the jungle and the solo are still a level behind. But it's being able to showcase, I think, the proactive nature Sarpei is looking for. After 2 games of Nemesis where you're more a facilitator than you are a carry, I want to see how Sarpei adjusts to this set style of play.
And it was a very quiet set earlier on between Clay Soldiers and Pandemonium, game number 1.
Yeah, Saraga.
Shuffled by the wayside for Saraga. So now another chance for Set to kind of flex those muscles. Been a very, very talked about God and picks and bans. Where would he fall? How prioritized would the set be? It's been important. Hasn't been the end-all be-all. But now a chance for Sarpei to show us why. Civi finds his way into the back line. That's the blink, but has to dash away. And now Pandemonium trying to chase down the Sobek, trying to chase down the tier. You will not get the kill onto Agent just yet. Joshi lurking off to the left-hand side, has the Taiko drums ready. Blue buff gets dropped down by the Clay Soldiers this time. So another blue buff invade for Pandemonium. This time doesn't result in much, but the greatest Scorpion on the other end is the prize.
I mean, they're able to pick that up. That's the first time, I think in Game 1 as well, in Game 2, we saw Pandemonium really hyper-focus the right side. I should call him what his name is, Forp, over here, the Fire Giant Scorpion, to really focus him down the minute he spawned. I mean, it was in the pit, and then it was gone. We had no time to really discuss whether or not it would make a big difference. Meanwhile, over here on the other side, nobody's cared about the Gold Fury Scorpion Gorp for, well, at least another 4 more minutes, like about 12 minutes in game, maybe goes down, maybe a little bit earlier. But it seems like they've been a little more looked at. Granted, the patch they're playing on, this new patch recently, last Tuesday, made it a lot easier to kill these Scorpions off. And, you know, we were looking at 10 to 12 minutes before we saw the first one. Now we've seen multiple die in the pre-10-minute mark. Makes it a little bit easier. I wouldn't be surprised if Streak Up or Caspainify is able to rotate over and solo the one sitting over there in the Gold Fury pit. But I'm really curious as to why this time around Pandemonium was a little slower on the pull. They still get it, so I guess at the end of the day it doesn't make a big difference for them. It's just experience on their side. And it seems like maybe it's just been because right now Sarpei's looking for blood.
Wow, the 4-man squad for Pandemonium rolls through yet again. Saraga has already used his ultimate, and his Aegis will go down as well. Joshi, the one who deals the killing blow. Better believe Pandemonium are going to dive this tier 2 tower. Big knockback, though, and Sarpei will be the sacrificial lamb. Ferrokrick makes it a 2-for-1. Maybe the best you could hope for there if you're the Clay Soldiers.
Yeah, honestly, that was just a good play from Clay Soldiers to make sure that they lock down Sarpei to keep him in that tier 2. Nowhere to run because of their positioning as well, so you managed to pull that back. Otherwise, that was clean. There was a moment when Caspainify dashed into the wall, I just thought he got deleted, and it didn't give me the alert. Of course, he was just hiding out. Didn't save him too much, but that play, that little bit of prolongment, really does enable the rest of that to go out the way it kind of encounters, because he's the one who's able to dodge into the tier 2 and force it. Now, maybe looking for a rotation, went up to the ult, gets the slow. They're looking for blood.
Joshi uses the beads, does not have the Taiko drums. This is a Raijin without any tools.
Ooh,
that would have been
block.
massive for Kana. There would have been a flurry of executes on the other end. Instead, it's a body block, and I'm a monster, and a final killing blow from Saraga. And so, Gore, if you really look at the last couple of minutes, it was a 2-for-1 trade in favor of Pandemonium, and now a 2-for-none. Clay Soldiers have come out ahead in the numbers department to bring the kills right back to even.
And admittedly, now I'm looking at it, 700 gold, if even, maybe 800, as they fluctuate between each other. And what seems to be a surefire kill here on the Sarpei, that's going to make it so much easier here for Clay Soldiers. It feels like, again, any lead that Pandemonium had from invading the jungle, or from stripping away any of these buffs of these Scorpions, kind of falls by the wayside when you lose these fights as heavily as they did. You get a great fight from Ferrokrick, and Sarago, like, literally one step making the difference between Kana being able to pop off and have another insane solo game, and just hitting a Loki and watching as he gets slaughtered by everybody else, right? So, very good play from Clay Soldiers. It seems like last game got him into the right mindset, right? That teamfight mindset. It took him a little while, even in game number 2, to really come around to it. But right now, they're just playing as a group a little bit stronger than what we're seeing out of Pandemonium. It feels like they're being able to catch them off guard a little bit quicker as well. The ward coverage is a little stronger, and it's making it a lot easier for them to call out these rotations and really pick apart Pandemonium.
Yes, Pandemonium squad kind of living and dying by Kana, it felt like, in the previous couple of games. Kana 0-2 here. Sarpei 0-2 has the 2 assists. Streak up, I mean, it's been quiet, Gore. That's where the pressure really started for Pandemonium here in this game. If you're starting to look at KDAs, 201, that tells the story of a duo lane that went all right for Pandemonium and all wrong for the Clay Soldiers, but that hasn't been converted into much. That's that global pressure that I was wondering if it would force Caspanify to get a bit more aggressive with his ultimate. Granted, it's still early on in the game. You know, you only have a Devour's Gauntlet Executioner, Ninja Tabby, so you're not just going to randomly dunk down into solo lane, but for some of these team fights, maybe that's something that Gore, Pandemonium want to lean on a little bit more.
I mean, Apollo is going to be a big factor in the late game. Again, I'm looking at the builds because we've seen Streak Up go crit twice in a row now, and it's been right after his Executioners that he's picked up that Wind Demon, whether or not he's going to go for something like that as the Apollo and stick to this kind of crit build that he's held true to with the Heimdall, or if he's going to change it up to match and maybe go for Chin Size and go the more kind of tank killer route, as I would look at it. So keep your eyes on his items. Also keep an eye on the mid laners, because right now, like Joshi, again, 2-1-0, pretty solid rotation there earlier. But if Raijin especially falls behind here in terms of damage, he's 1 artifact behind what we have from Ferricrik. But if he starts to fall behind, Ferricrick's hitting a little harder in these team fights, and I think going to be able to confirm that damage a little easier. And we might see the Scylla really start to take off.
Shriek Up uses the Mez. Caspanify will dash out of the wall, use the Aegis. Surga is here as well. Shriek Up, Beads is out. All the CC there from Saraga, and it's going to be a 2-kill swing. This time Sarpei gets it done. Streak Up really set up the pins there, and then Sarpei bowls him down. This is a game of picks on both sides. Clay Soldiers get a couple, Pandemonium get a couple, back and forth, and the Gold Fury this time is what Pandemonium are eyeing on the back end of a 2-kill swing. Kana headed over to right, Agent half HP on the objective, Agent hanging in close by, dunk on down from Shriek Up, but Agent will dash away. And that'll just secure down this Gold Fury. Pandemonium with the biggest lead of the game.
I was wondering if Streak Up was going to go for damage on the Fury to help confirm it faster, or damage onto Agent to make him rethink his entire life of standing that close to 4 members of the other team. And yeah, it was definitely the second one. He wanted to make sure Agent had to have a little small existential crisis to make sure he's in the right position and gets out of there in time. And again, saves them, gets them a Fury, good amount of pressure. It's going to spawn with this next wave of minions. And it's so solid, I think, to find such a big turnaround for them, just to get some control back in their hands, right? It's not a lot. There's not a lot of gold separating this. We're pretty much in the same space that we were last game, where it's gone both ways. We've seen Clay Soldiers win a fight. We've seen Pandemonium win some fights. At the end of the day, Pandemonium has a lead, but they lost one big fight at a Fire Giant, and that lost them the game last time. It could very easily happen again.
There's no bets.
Not quite as easy for Ferricrik to hit someone like Joshi through 3 walls with an ult from way far away, but it is still going to be deadly.
Wow, Sarpei hurt, huh? There's a shield to save the lives of Saraga, and an I'm a Monitor, and Sarpei is just going to walk out for free. Agent dies 2, Tycho drums used for damage. Caspanify not taunted back in, instead it's a Thunder Crash from Joshi. And maybe the damage is exactly what Pandemonium needed. A Fearless knocks a couple back, forces a couple beads. Sibby here, full HP, up and over with the Lawbringer. But now Ferricrik left untouched on the crush. Sibby here can pull things right on back. This is what I mean when I say stuff is chaotic.
I mean, yeah, that one. Look, if you're rotating, you see that was tunnel vision through and through. Joshy's low. I'm tier. I'm pretty healthy. There's only an 8. Like, there's only a Xing Jin here with him. I can kill this guy. Streak up, and this goes on the other side for Pandemonium. Caspainify will join the fight when you least expect them, and you have to be way more careful about your positioning. And Farrakrick, you can't be in the middle of the lane when I'm having this conversation, because there he comes again. Streak up right on cue.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, that's what I wanted to see. It was a slower start, slower transition. I was wondering when that would start happening. Streak up with the massive lead over Caspainify. Couple of levels, so massive maybe an overstatement, but still a lead nonetheless. Make use of that global pressure, the engage that the Apollo brings. And now Pandemonium starting to edge out that lead just a little bit further. 4,000 gold. That might be the widest gold lead we've had in this set in general. 4,000 gold. It feels like it's been so close. Couple thousand gold here and there, back and forth throughout this set. 7,000 though is the experience difference, and that's the big number, I think, to look at here. Farrakrick, a 1-level lead over Joshy in the mid lane, but this downtime from the Scylla is going to allow Joshy to catch back up. Couple levels in support, 3 levels Gore over in Hunter, and I think that's going to be the big difference maker.
Yeah, that's just clean. He's the highest level in the game right now. That's going to be even easier against someone like in a matchup where Streak Up versus Sibby. Streak Up's going to be able to come out and swing really hard. He goes for that Wind Demon, so that answers the question on crit versus pin builds. That just means he's going to be very deadly. Saraga, Farrakrick, Caspainify, especially Caspainify. Double down on Caspainify there. Cannot take this fight, but he's got 2 levels up over the jungler. Like, Streak Up is going to control this game.
Oh, no.
If they can continue catching people out like this, it's going to be very easy for Pandemonium to walk away with a lot of these objectives.
Agent had to go underwater just to stay alive. Caspainify uses the Aegis, presumably also just to stay alive.
He's dead otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, right. You're feeling like he's going to die on the back end of it. So, it's the delayed death maybe for Caspainify here. Once that Aegis goes down, the dive potential onto this Chernobog becomes a little bit higher. It's going to be a solo push on the left-hand side from Streak Up here. 403, why not on the Apollo when you've got a lead like he does? In Pandemonium, we're going to send 3 barreling down the mid lane. Saraga playing flex along with his jungle counterpart in Sarpei. It's going to be a 2 versus 1 on left should Saraga choose to engage, but Sarpei is here as well. No big objectives looked at. The Fury up soon, so that could be considered. Double knockback from Sibby, and that's put Preds in an awkward spot. Lawbringer up and down. Starts off the fight for the Clay Soldiers, but the disengage there from Joshy. Oh, Saraga's found the backline. Saraga's found massive engage, but Pandemonium, they shrug it off. They do the damage. They get the kill. Sarpei has a double. Sarpei makes it 3. Caspainify finally gets the set off the map, but what an engage from Pandemonium.
The fact that Farrakrick, I don't know how no one dies prior to that. It took so long before Sarpei goes down, and even then, is maybe Sarpei's own hubris. It isn't anything Clay Soldiers is doing, right? He's diving a tier 2 tower because he just got a triple kill. He's feeling himself. I think well played on Pandemonium to get that aggressive. It just kind of out of nowhere all of a sudden pop off. And now with this amount of pressure, again, that amount of gold in their pockets, kills in their favor, means a free Oni Fury. Honestly, could mean a free Fire Giant. They still got 10 seconds without anybody respawning on the side of Clay Soldiers. They can at least set up for a Pyromancer. He's about to respawn over there on the right-hand side of the map. That is going to be a surefire and easy pickup for them. With all this gold, I want to see what Streak Up. Level 20, first one to hit 20 in the game. Maybe actually slightly behind Sarpei. I didn't see which one of them won that race. But I want to know where he goes with it. He upgrades his starter now to that 1-8 arrow, so a big burst again. Attack speed, you're going to be able to get some, guess what? Crit on there, some health for survivability, but the basic attack damage as well. Like, that's a very, very niche stat, right? Like, basic attack damage, not physical power. You're not getting it on your abilities. But guess what? For Apollo, that's fantastic. It works well with your passive. He's able to get a tier 2 and his crit items as well. Like, Streak Up, it's hard to talk more about him. I think Sarpei has a really, really good performance in that last fight, but Streak Up is the one that is really kind of stealing the spotlight for me.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has stepped up at different times throughout this set. Right now it's Sarpei at 6-3 and 4. Streak Up there at 4-06. Everyone from Pandemonium playing their role. Joshy's been great at finding some damage as well. Clay
Oh,
Soldiers
no.
do not want to let this FG go quietly. Clay Soldiers steal it away. Pandemonium, that's such an awkward call. They just kind of back away while Clay Soldiers walk in. Sarpei gets the kill onto Agent. Pandemonium need to win this fight to make it any sort of worth. They've gotten a couple of kills. A 2-for-1 though, Core, and Clay Soldiers will be able to disengage 3 strong with FG.
Look, there are certain health bars on the Fire Giant you do not stop DPSing the Fire Giant for, especially if there's a Sobek lurking in the waters walking towards it. And anything less than 1/4 HP, that's in that threshold. You should not stop it. I think they were waiting. Joshi was trying to come through, but it was just so awkwardly timed. And look, you're going up against a Scylla, you're up against a Sobek, you're up against a Tier, you are up against things that are going to be able to jump in and find at least enough burst damage to steal a Fire Giant away. The first two more so than the Tier, but you don't have as much of that on the side of Pandemonium. The best you can do is burn it faster and better than what they are able to pick up. And so that's just, I want to say, a big misplay on them as to where their focus goes. They still win that fight afterward, but now you've got Kaspanify, Farrakrick, and Saragazek, like all the good damage dealers on the side of Clay Soldiers, with a pretty big buff for the next few team fights. They've got sustain, they've got the ability to kill you a little bit faster, some of that penetration coming through. That's going to help equalize things out. If they win a fight, you can bet Kaspanify is going to be crucial in tearing down some towers. Doesn't look like they're going to be able to get much done, though. Clay Soldiers, they're at enough of a deficit that they can't really run it down mid, even to get the that tier 2, or that tier 1, I should say, that is, just a stone's throw away from dead. It's not going to be enough for them, so they have to play it a little more passive. It means that Fire Giant's not going to be the end-all, be-all. If anything, it just delays the inevitable. Pandemonium, they get that Fire Giant. They probably are winning the game in the next couple of minutes. Clay Soldiers get that Fire Giant, and Pandemonium have to wait a little while before they win another fight against Clay Soldiers.
Feels bad for Clay Soldiers. The gold differential, I believe, was at
so
negative 2,000, negative 3,700 on this Fire Giant power play. The gold differential has increased for Pandemonium, so not feeling too bad. Largely the fight on the back end. Traditional sports have a bit of a rain delay when it starts raining. Clay Soldiers put this game maybe in a bit of a Fire Giant delay for Pandemonium, but instead Pandemonium's still feeling okay. It's just 3 members with FG. I say just, but Gore, you make a really good point that it's maybe the 3 most important members, but Pandemonium do not care. Preds does not care. It's an engage on the back. Agent evaporates as Streak Up finds the damage there. Streak Up turns around, 2v1s those that are trying to dive him on the back line. Pandemonium, Gore, so far ahead. They're going to look at the left side Phoenix here, and they might go further.
I mean, they're going to be able to burn this one. It looks like no problem. Only 1 tower up, but 3 members, 2 with Fire Giant.
Ooh.
It's risky, but you can go in and fight it. You're low health. I don't know. I think you go for a second Phoenix here. It's a little safer for you overall. You have 20 seconds to work with. It looks like they might not even want to do that. They might just be backing off here. Still a big dub in the side of Pandemonium. You kill 2, you get a Phoenix. You get to walk back and potentially pick up this Gold Fury. Potentially, come on, pick up a Gold Fury pretty much for free. And then set up for a Fire Giant. They've only got 30 seconds left on the side of Clay Soldiers, so it's not even a big worry for them to be able to scoop that one up. Again, a win. Slow at that, but a win nonetheless.
It's going to feel better for Streak Up as well, getting those ornate arrow stacks. With all the extra gold he'll have in his back pocket. 13 stacks right now for 1,300 gold. Goes a little bit higher here on the back end of the Gold Fury, 1,700 now for 17 stacks. Obviously, you're going to spend just a little bit of that. So biding their time here, Gore. Fire Giant about to fall off, about 1 minute left until the respawn of the FG. It would be a big fumble, I think, if Pandemonium let the next FG go the same way the first one did. They were confident enough starting up the FG just a few minutes ago with a bit less of a lead. Now the lead has grown even more. So you feel like this is a big shot call for Pandemonium. Let's batten down the hatches, let's button everything up, let's get this Fire Giant, and we'll work into the base and end the game.
See, this is days where they miss. I would argue if you're Pandemonium, you would miss and kind of want the old Hand of the Gods, where you can execute these targets to the Fire Giant and the Gold Fury at the time. They didn't have all those other fancy Furies at 25% HP. Just because I'm trying to think of how do you compete with Sobek and Scylla in terms of your engage. Raigen's got a pretty decent ult, but I mean, it's 4 shots. It's not known for one big burst amount of damage. It's kind of a sustained burst, if that makes sense. Like, it's 4 big shots that come through instead. And so unless Joshi is able to time it well, there's always steal potential on Clay Soldiers. And now they know they can do it. Look, that's the scariest part, is when you know that it's dangerous. So I want to see them pressure it out, maybe force Agent to ult, maybe Farrakhan to ult, and get them uncomfortable.
There's also a chance where you don't even fight for the Fire Giant. If you can force Clay Soldiers to fight underneath this tier 2 tower, you're feeling pretty good. Sarpei uses the Aegis, but it's a double stun from Saraga nonetheless. The rest of Clay Soldiers engage on the front line. Saraga gets the opening kill of this engagement on the Sarpei. A perfect target, a double kill in the back line. Saraga has done his job as he finds 2 kills, and Clay Soldiers run through the rest of the health bars of Pandemonium here. Preds and Streak Up, the last 2 alive. Gore, Pandemonium are having a hard time figuring out how to end this game.
It's so difficult because Streak Up is doing so well, and that makes up for the fact that he alone, even though the other 2 carries were dead, I think if Kana lives there, they could still be fighting. They could continue the amount of pressure they have. I'm also surprised to see Clay Soldiers haven't started the Fire Giant. Like, they have the burn. I guess they were waiting for Agent here, but between Farrakhan and Kaspanify, they have enough damage and confirm on this one. Again, ult's not necessarily available, although just coming back up there as the I'm a Monster. So either big play time for Preds, or maybe Streak Up. I didn't expect him to go in there.
Oh, Streak Up. This is a 2 versus 4. And Pandemonium, or Streak Up and Preds, are happy to take this fight. Streak Up is absolutely swinging here. They've delayed off the FG at half the numbers of Clay Soldiers. And Streak Up and Preds were able to make it work. I'm not sure he can solo out the Fire Giant, but Preds definitely delaying Farrakhan and Kaspanify off. Instead, Preds has started the FG. The rest of the respawns from Pandemonium just around the backside, but CB will check. Preds does fall. Agent going to be respawning about 20 or 30 seconds, ahead of his counterpart on Pandemonium, but there's still Gore, plenty of damage. Now Pandemonium start to look towards the FG. I'll delay here, see if Sibby steals it away. No, Pandemonium secure the objective, but Saraga gets a kill, and it's on to Streak Up. So important to get that Apollo out of the fight, get the FG off the Apollo, but instead you lose 2 in the meantime. Hard to call that one, but Pandemonium get the FG. Big win.
I mean, they're up so much. 13,000 gold. Realistically, now they need to win the focus on the map. Left side Phoenix response. Farrakhan took good care of that one. But that's such a huge bounty to kill off Streak Up. Not just in terms of the presence that Streak Up has had this game and getting him out of the game just for a few seconds, a full minute without having to deal with this Apollo is something they literally have not experienced for 29 minutes until now. Streak Up going to be worth a lot of gold, though. 8-0-8, I think 8-0-10, I guess, obviously, before he died there and goes down. It's a big kill. Is going to be able to give you a lot of money in terms of payout, but like you said, maybe just delaying it. It slows down where this Fire Giant goes, gets it off of Streak Up, so it ensures that he's not going to be able to just shred the Phoenixes on top of it. But you get it onto your, well, one of your 2 front lines. Kana's going to have some of that resurgence, that regeneration properties that comes through with the Fire Giant. Sarpei and Joshi, they're just going to hit real hard. There's not many other ways to look at it. They also get that regeneration property, but realistically we're looking at how fast they're going to start killing things, and I'm looking at Agent and Sibby, maybe even Saraga here, because he's on not as tanky as we got used to seeing the Loki towards the end of it, but with things like the hi-rez, he's doing a lot of burst. If you can kill him faster, anything is better, and he's going for a pretty wide loop. Sarpei and Joshi have to work carefully to stay alive here. Streak Up's made his way over here. This is a good fight for Pandemonium. They could just win off of one good offense under a Phoenix.
That's right, you still got 2 minutes left on the Fire Giant, so definitely nothing to rush here. But you got to be careful of Saraga, who's suddenly come alive towards the end of this game. Hydra's Heartseeker tends to feel bad for your health bar. So this Loki is something you have to be mindful of if you're Pandemonium. And Saraga, if you can do what you've been doing, delete the backline before they have an opportunity to get into any of these fights, things will certainly feel a whole lot better. No split here from Pandemonium. They're going to allow Clay Soldiers to funnel up all beneath just this left side Phoenix, and the waves are getting cleared, Gore, effectively just as fast as they've been arriving. Surprised maybe that they're not sending anyone towards mid or right, or they may be just looking to engage.
It's only because of Seriga, right? That awkward moment of having to engage around a Loki. Now it looks like they want to go in, but even still, it's just trepidation from both sides. Agent relatively low. That Phoenix is getting whittled away, though, David. Not a lot of help.
One more
left.
wave.
One more wave like that, and they're going to be able to get it. And honestly, I don't even think they need it. Just get Streak up in there.
Agent half HP, Crush over the wall. Agent 0 HP, the first casualty of this late game fight. I'm a Monster connects for a little bit of damage, but it's on the front lines. Big whirlwind of Rage and Steel, and Sarpei finishes off one of the kills. Raiju desperately trying to close the gap. Streak up though. Ult on down. Now it's the Titan being looked at by Pandemonium, Ferricrick, Seriga, Sibi. The last three to keep this set alive for the Clay Soldiers. Preds is going to be out of the fight now for Pandemonium. Sibi getting it done. Seriga takes one with him, and Joshi cleans up that kill. Streak up, the important one to look at now. If you're the Clay Soldiers, Ferricrick has to go back to Fountain, and the free casting Apollo will end the game. Pandemonium are able to take it in 3.
8-1-12. It's hard to talk about literally anybody that isn't Streak up here, but I'll do my best. I think everybody on that team really gets to flourish and showcase what they have. Specifically, getting to see Sarpei in the jungle, I think he had a really good resurgence. Again, going from Nemesis onto something like Set is a style change. Like, Nemesis is more of a setup, even when you are going forward and chasing down kills and getting them yourself. Like, she can absolutely carry a game. But Set does it a little bit better, and even though he didn't have necessarily a clean game throughout all of that, you got to see his impact throughout all of that, especially at the end, just making sure that Seriga couldn't get that Loki rotation that probably could have won Clay Soldiers the fight, really ensured victory.
Gore, it's a fantastic set to start off this week in competitive. Smite, close, back and forth, but Pandemonium are the ones standing on top at the end of this 3-game set over the Clay Soldiers, who did have a lot of fight back here in this one. That's it for our first set of the day. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the desk will finish it off and break it down.
Well, in the end, it is another win there for Pandemonium. We got the questions to the questions. The answer to the question we were asking there was indeed, and unfortunately, Clay Soldiers ended up dropping just a bit lower on long split and phase and all that, though, so they'll have plenty of time to bounce back. It's still Finge and aggro here, so we'll talk a little bit about how they ended up with that lead. Towards the end of the game, it was a pretty monstrous lead they were looking at, rather comfortable. Things maybe got a little bit sloppy there for them, but the duo lane started off horribly for the Clay Soldiers, didn't it? I mean, just
yeah.
an excellent start over there with all kinds of pressure, and really Clay Soldiers never were able to bounce back across the map.
And Streak Up in particular really leveraged that lead very, very well. He and Sarpei became this very difficult to stop backline dive, and I mean backline dive from Streak Up. He's playing that Apollo, can get into that backline a little bit more easily than a lot of other hunters, and this is why Set continues to be a priority pick at the high levels, because when Sarpei has a game like this, he looks very, very tough to stop. But I agree that for me, this game really hinged on the duo lane falling behind early. A bad pluck there from Agent led to the first blood. Then he came back, died again in lane without any sort of additional help from across the map. And Streak Up then was in a position where his dive is just far more effective than that of Caspanify's.
You just don't see that a whole lot in the duo lane, right? Multiple kills early on just in the 2v2. I think that gave him a pretty big edge to start things off. 8-1 and 12 from Streak Up Preds, having an excellent game too. Really across the board, great work from Pandemonium. The Achilles Rakana maybe didn't quite do as much, but still had a good game in the end as they would have wanted, I'd imagine, there from Kana. And if you're Clay Soldiers, maybe a bit going back to the drawing board here, right? I mean, it seems like they almost got baited into the Sobek pick with the way that the picks and bans went all the way up until the game 3. I don't think that's how it actually panned out, but it certainly felt that way. Surgzek got as much kills nearly as he had deaths, but was back there getting those kills. You guys talked about what you want from Loki, and it's like getting towards that mid to late where he's able to get back there one-shotting. I don't know if we saw it from in this game, but hopefully we'll get to see it from Loki's going forward.
Yeah, I think that really the front line just struggled so much in this game for the Clay Soldiers. I mean, you mentioned the Sobek ban. Remember, they also banned Tyr in the first phase in game number 2. Those two picks combined went at 0-11 in this game. So the front line did not work out particularly well for the Clay Soldiers. You're just not going to win many games when your tanks are 0-11. They've got to do a better job of keeping themselves alive while facilitating that backline damage.
Let's go ahead and take a look at these updated standings. Now with 4 games played, that is Pandemonium up at the top. Clay Soldiers dropped down a bit, as we said, but those guys have played a little bit more. We have one more EU set coming up. It's North America after that, and then we'll play the remainder of those EU games kind of throughout the week. So we'll get to see the rest of these teams update throughout and see if they can catch up to Pandemonium. We're up there at the top. As I said, we got one more EU game coming up today. That's Accounting Department versus Just F6. Kind of a critical game down there, especially if you're Just F6 who are on a rough kind of 0-3 start and really need to get a dub going. And if you're Accounting Department trying to finally get some momentum going, that's a big one to see later on. And then, as we said, there are going to be some more big games coming up throughout the rest of this week. So make sure you're watching. Plenty of SCC stuff happening here in Week 4. And we want to see kind of where these teams end up. I'm a little surprised at where Accounting Department are currently. I want to see them kind of raise up a little bit. There's a lot to see.
I agree, man. You got to stay tuned. Thursdays and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday before SPL. SCC's been so much fun to watch this year. I think people are missing out if they're not here.
Well, thank you all for watching so far. We still have plenty more coming, though, so take this little break, refill the drinks, get a snack, whatever you need, and get right back here because more SCC is on the way.